And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Thursday, January 3rd, 2013. Boy, old habits die hard, don't they?
Only one day it took.
I'm Doug Hagmann. I'm the co-host along with my son, Joe Hagmann. We are together. We are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And folks, the next 3 hours you're about to hear some of the most incredible radio on the Internet. And I say that because our guest, Mr. Stan Deyo, is a guy that we both Joe and I admire extremely a lot, him and his wife, Holly. If you visit his website, StanDeyo, DEYO.com, folks, bookmark that website and visit the website. And if I can say this in opening, one of the books that really changed my perception of events is a book he wrote called The Cosmic Conspiracy. And the title, don't let the title fool you, because it's not about UFOs or anything out there. The final edition, 2010, which was released, his most recent release.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book.
It is, the information contained in this book will, I don't want to say change your life, but it will change the way you look at things. And it's just an incredible work. And also, Dare to Prepare by his wife, Holly Deyo. One of the most thorough prep books on the market. And I spent some time this afternoon, talking with both Mr. Deyo and Holly and his wife, taking them away from important work, no doubt. But I've got to tell you, they are incredible people. So StanDeyo.com, Millennium Arc as well. Folks, if you go to our website at HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the link there. You can watch, or it'll take you directly to Stan's website. Also, I've included a link there for show images. And after talking with Mr. Deyo today, he suggested that that will come in handy. So if you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, look at the article, expand the article into the full article, and from there you can, of course, you can watch us live, listen to us live, as well as access the show images off of Mr. Deyo's website, because we're going to be talking about that tonight. But Mr. Deyo has got an incredible resume. He's held above top secret clearances. He's worked for the FBI. He's a physicist. He's one of these great minds. And I say that because I know so few, and I mean that.
Yeah, the book is way ahead of its time, even today.
And he doesn't need really any introduction beyond that. He's been a guest on Coast to Coast AM forever. I think he helped build that program. That's my assessment. He certainly added the credibility behind it. And one of the things I've noticed, and I've got to tell you this, folks, one of the things I've noticed is I've got a source, intelligence source, that has basically verified or given me information that has been consistent with or paralleled with the information contained in the book Cosmic Conspiracy. And to hear the intelligence side meeting with the information in that book is just phenomenal. So now that I've taken up so much time, and by the way, I want to tell the listeners, those people who sent questions ahead of time yesterday, following our show yesterday, I did submit them. Some of the duplicates, well, all the duplicates I omitted. Believe it or not, there were 3 duplicate questions. And sent them to Stan so he can answer them at his leisure during the program tonight. And we can take some calls as long as they're on point, probably the final hour of the show, if Mr. Dale is agreeable to that. But without further ado, Joe and I would like to welcome Mr. Stan Dale to the program. Stan, welcome.
Thank you, guys. Is my video coming through over there okay?
Yes, it is.
You're
Nice and clear, and you're looking
fabulous, yes.
Okay, I don't see much on your side of the video. Is that because it's pointing a different direction or what?
It is picking up for the time being. We were messing with the sound, and we will have this shortly.
Yeah, actually, Stan, what happened was we were trying to repair some muffling sound. Our sound was muffled, and so today I got this bright idea. Hey, let's 10 minutes before showtime. Let's see if we can fix things 10 minutes before showtime. Okay, and it didn't go well. So,
well, while you were doing that, I was, a few minutes ahead of showtime also, making some changes to those show images and trying to get some animations up there in response to a couple of questions that I saw that you sent me. But anyway.
Oh, okay.
So we've both been stretching the envelope there.
Yes, but I've got to say, Stan, you're looking dapper, and the folks, if you want to watch live, Mr. Dale, because he's a guy like I am. I talk with my hands, and he does too, and of course, the subject matter would warrant that kind of posturing. So you can go to Homeland Security US, the number 1.tk. That's Homeland Security US, the number 1.tk. Now, if you can't remember that, just go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the Watch Live link, and then you can watch live. So anyway, one of the first things, Stan, is there's so much going on right now. I mean, news-wise, Earth-wise, it seems like every day we wake up to different headlines, different types of headlines, different things going on. One of the things that Joe and I were talking about before the show were earth changes, volcanoes, earthquakes, and I noticed sinkholes, yeah. What in the world is going on here with our Earth? I know that's an open-ended question, but perhaps you can hone in on a few things that maybe you've got your eyes on.
Okay. It's interesting. You and I were talking earlier today about some information you got from certain intelligence sources, which supported what I've been telling people for a number of years now. And in fact, I'm preparing a formal paper on it right now. And that's the nature of how planets, stars, and galaxies work. They're not solid as people might think. In the case of the Earth, it is a typical planet which formed out of the spin, here's my hand movement, the spin of an invisible fluid, which we call the ether space or the fluid space, which forms all atoms and galaxies and planets and stars, etc. It forms them by spinning smaller atoms, together into a cohesive sphere. It's like taking a glass of water and pouring some white sand in it and some black iron powder. Now, the iron powder is heavier than the sand, but the black and white shows you what happens when you stir up that glass of water. It spins, and it makes a vortex down there like a tornado, just like that. And down at the very bottom of the glass, as it starts to slow down the spin, the iron filings and the sand start to form a mound, kind of a cone shape down there. And that cone shape, if it were allowed to do it in free space, but actually instead of being a cone shape like that, it would be kind of like this, kind of splayed at the top. Anyway, if you put that spinning glass of water and sand and iron filings onto a mirror so you can see it, the top and the bottom of it through the mirror, it's roughly an approximation of what happens when a planet forms. Atoms, like sand and iron, etc., are spun, forced into the center of this, just like in that glass of water, and they separate out by their density. So the iron filings would go first, then the sand, and any other little dust in the water. Now, on the images, the show images page I've got up there, there's a link to hollow planets. You'll see hollow planets in the second row. First picture, it's got a cutaway view of like the Earth, and a red core and a green mantle, and then some blue out on the side. But if you click on that, it'll take you over to the pages, or the page with the images, which show you a bit of what I'm going to be talking about. Now, a hollow planet can have a hard, solid core or a fluid core, and around that a blank space, an empty space, a void, and then around that a mantle. It can also have multiple layers of voids and matter that have separated out, like, say, in the case of Saturn or Jupiter. They may have multiple voids or empty shells concentrically formed around the center of the core of the planet. Now, as a planet spins and it gets older and it starts to lose some of its spin momentum, as it does, the surface of the planet starts to stretch out and form kind of like the rings of Saturn. And it stretches out, and you lose the surface of the planet as it becomes rings. And then as the rings dissipate and blow away, a new surface of that planet gradually ages and slows down and disappears after it becomes a series of rings. Now, it's the natural order of things for this to happen. The Earth is, like many other planets in our system at the moment, slowing down and about to go through another change in its diameter. It's about to open up slowly over, a few thousand years or less, open up and become rings around what's left of the Earth's core. But until that time, as we expand, the surface of the Earth stretches. It's like a balloon that's about half blown up, and you get your black marking pen and you write on here, continent USA and the Pacific Ring of Fire and China and all this. You draw them on there, and then you start blowing the balloon up further. And you'll see that as it blows up, these continents and these rings of fire things start to stretch. And this is what is happening now to the Earth. We are going through another expansion phase. Originally, as far as we can determine from the figures that we've been able to obtain, the Earth was once about 25% smaller in diameter than it is now. Instead of being about 8,000, it was about 6,000 miles in diameter. Now, it stretched, and when it did, it separated all the continents, and it happened in the times of the Egyptian pharaohs, because one of the pharaohs that was reported in Velikovsky's book, in his work on Earth and Upheaval, was that one of the pharaohs complained constantly to his scribes, when will the Earth stop the groaning and, moaning? And what was happening was the planet was stretching, and the continents, instead of being one landmass, were splitting into continents. Originally, they called it Gondwanaland or Pangaea, the original single landmass on the Earth surrounded by water. But when it's expanded like this, all the nations were formed by the splitting of that continent, that one single landmass. Now, today, if you take the planet, say a globe of the planet, where all of the continents and the landmasses have been painted on it where they belong, if you take that and you compress it down 25%, you will see that the curved coastlines of Europe, South Africa, South America, the United States, all of these things, instead of being separated by a shape like that at the current diameter of the Earth, they form and knit together at 3/4 of our current diameter. These things are all covered in works by people like H.G. Owen, the Atlas of World Continental Displacement, and also on the page on the website that I've directed you to there on the Hollow Planets page, you'll see down toward the bottom, about the second row from the bottom, links to the work of the cartoonist Neil Adams, who as a personal hobby has developed animations of Earth when the continents are where they are now, and as they shrunk down, as the diameter of the planet shrunk, shows you how every continent fits together into one landmass. He even did it with the moon, showing the moon has stretched as it aged. He's got animations there showing Mars doing the same thing. These are real images from these planets, our planet Mars, the moon. Moon of, Titan, I think, is another one he's done, one of the larger gas planets, and showing how it has expanded from its original size. These things are much better than equations to look at, these animations, because it shows you what we're talking about. As the planet expands, as part of normal aging, the surface stretches, and there's less pressure holding the dirt together when you expand to a larger size. We're starting one of those expansion phases now, and I don't know how long it will take to complete, but as part of what happens, my research shows that small holes physically open up at the polar regions of planets and moons and even stars as they throw off that outer shell. This may be why two things are being observed now. Well, three, actually. The wandering magnetic pole that people are reporting, the periodic drift in the Earth's axis just within a day or so and then back to normal, the heating of the poles. Now, if we're opening up little tiny holes to the core of the planet at North and South Pole, it's going to release heat. And the animations on this page that I've put up on the website, I show the animation they call animation or animated, and you'll see if you press that, little tiny holes and heat escaping as these holes open. They will open and close. Periodically they do that until the last moment of its aging of this particular mantle or crust, and at the last moment when it's going to fall apart and become rings, the hole does not close. I don't think that's what we're going to see now. I think we're seeing just simply a periodic small opening of the poles to release heat into the polar ice caps. Certainly the North Pole is being heated rapidly, and now then they've determined that the South Pole is too, even though they had a record ice buildup for the season. It is heating as well. There's even a lake about 7 miles down there at Vostok in the South Pole, which is just at freezing, not frozen. It's a lake, a huge lake, 7 miles down there. So there's some heat getting out and up into that lake. This also, the fourth thing it could be explaining that people are observing is sinkholes. Now, guys, when Doug, when you and I were young, did you ever hear of a sinkhole?
No, not like these. I mean,
I never did.
I can't remember a time where I did either. And now we're seeing humongous, 4 football fields long, 30 feet deep, 5 acres, whatever it is, and they're all over the country.
Well, let me qualify that. I do recall when I was a young child, there was what they termed a sinkhole, which was the street collapsing because of a sewer main that collapsed. But no, I mean, in terms of what we're seeing today, of course not. And people, that don't confuse the issue with, a sewer line breaking down and the street collapsing because of that. You're talking about sand sinkholes like in Louisiana and other places that are. Yeah,
in South America where the whole center of a town disappeared down a hole, and in Florida where there are numerous ones of them. But what is happening is, if you imagine gravity, it's really a two-dimensional force, but a two-directional force. But if you imagine gravity just compressing the surface of the Earth down so that everything is pressed together. Now, if you change the diameter of the planet, the gravity is going to weaken as it expands. And if you do, you don't have the same gripping pressure forcing the atoms of dirt and water and everything else together. So if you have an area that is marginal as far as supporting the weight above it on the surface of the Earth, and it gets wet, or if it just is normally damp, but nothing is, because it's under such compression it hasn't released. When the Earth starts to expand and release the pressure on just a bit, it will collapse. And it can be confused with a normal thing like a flow of an underground stream or something that has never caused it to weaken before. But when the pressure goes off, the water flows through the formation, and kabam, down it goes. Look at how many of these holes, the real holes due to expansion, are circular. They're not like a rip or a tear or a volcanic an earthquake type fault line. These are round things that go straight down. The salt biospheres, boy, they're round, part of the problem there when those break is not just that it makes a sinkhole. In our infinite wisdom, U.S. corporations have been going over to Florida and out into the Gulf there, into the salt dye piers are called, or domes, and they've been injecting into these cavity, or these like salt domes, injecting radioactive waste, injecting toxic chemicals and gases, and to get rid of them. They figure to be safe. Now these are breaking open. And when they do, seawater rushes in the case of those offshore, and they leach in the case of those onshore in Louisiana, and force all this toxic crud right up to the surface and out into the community. People can't live there in that Coin Bayou anymore. I mean, it's just terrible.
So that's man-made, though. I mean, that was caused by man doing something, as you said, right? I mean, putting the stuff down there, but nobody anticipated the surface of the Earth expanding and weakening that and collapsing it. That's what the problem is. If that hadn't happened, that'd be a nice, safe place to store your gas and your diesel and everything else they want to do, and the toxic waste. But because of the stretching is breaking these domes. Now we've got a real problem, and nobody anticipated this. Oh, okay. All right. So we have an expanding Earth. I mean, the planet is expanding.
Yes.
But it now you said no one anticipated it, but did they know about it? Or, I mean, is this and forgive my ignorance on this, because I just recently began to, began my own research and my education in this. Was this something that was known, that the Earth is expanding? I mean, did people know? Did scientists know this?
Well, it has been in the public arena for probably 35 to 40 years in technical papers I've seen. I did reference those and discuss them in my book, The Vindicator Scrolls, which is now out of print. But I listed the major thesis on it, which was done by H.G. Owen in the Continental Displacement Atlas. But he went into the scientific paper presenting the arguments for it. But he is not alone, and he was not alone at the time. Now, did this information, was it accepted by the public, established scientific community? I don't think so. And I don't think that they would go to some large corporation like Texas Instruments or, Texas Brine Corporation and say, you better think about the Earth might expand, and stretch apart and break all this down and the end of the world and, stuff like, they'd sound like an idiot. So I think that it's a factor of a number of things that cause big business to either not know it or ignore it or not be told about the potential problem, so they went straight ahead and said, look, our engineering reports show those domes are solid. They'll be there to the end of time. Well, it's a safe place to dump junk. Well, nowadays in the back rooms, we're all aware of this. And I think, Doug, I don't know how much you want to say about it, but you have had official confirmation of that from an intelligence source, haven't you?
Yes, sir. And folks, that was one thing that really kind of surprised me. The level of, I guess, I don't want to say interfacing, but it's interesting to listen to someone connected to the intelligence industry talk about Earth changes in the language that Mr. Deo does, and say that, there's a level of knowledge here where our government and other governments are actually using, they understand this physics, and they're using certain things with respect to the physics of the Earth, including Earth changes, to their advantage. I mean, for practical force multipliers, if you will, in situations. So, I mean, that opens up a whole litany of questions for me, but yes, in fact, the intelligence source did say the Earth is expanding, and the intelligence sources know about this, or the agencies know about this, as the governments do, and there's some play with respect to what's going on. So so that brings me to the question that was not answered by my source. Knowing that the Earth is expanding, what could they do with this information? I mean, how could this be a force multiplier in any situation? Can they predict earthquakes, cause earthquakes? I mean, what's the deal?
Well, I'm sure that they're probably using a more advanced technique than I'm using to forecast earthquakes. But with the planet expansion, it is a problem to the New World Order, to the people who are kind of the elite in charge of our planet with all the money and power. They have been building underground bolt holes for, 30 years at least, maybe longer. And these underground facilities are rigid. They tunnel them out of granite and that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that this has been happening, but when the Earth expands, some of these tunnels, and they're not just habitations, they're transit tunnels across the United States. When these tunnels crack, if you're going through it at high speed, in a rail or car or whatever they travel in underground, that could be kind of catastrophic. And so I'm sure they're looking at that with a view to preserving or making alternate routes for their underground tunnel communication across the United States. And this flight would be classified and under the auspices of the NSA or whatever, is because it is a threat to national security from the military side, because we put a lot of our stuff underground to keep it from being detected from orbit or even from surface spies, etc., from our enemies like the Russians, the Chinese, the terrorists, etc., etc. That's why I think they're paying such close attention to it, not to use it as a weapon against anybody or whatever. It's something to be avoided and to be mitigated in their underground facilities. That's my opinion.
And that makes sense to me. I mean, that's fine. This brings me to another kind of an academic question. If the Earth is indeed expanding, and you may have covered this earlier in the conversation, that means that the Earth had at one time been smaller than what it is, obviously. Right? I mean, it's...
Yes.
Okay, all right.
About 25% smaller, like about 6,000 miles in diameter instead of, roughly 8,000. There's an interesting point. I study old languages, or in particular the ancient Hebrew, because of things that happened in the Genesis account. One of the things that we see back there is the tale of Noah. And, people go to Sunday school and they read it in their comic books and they say, oh, yeah, it rained 40 days and 40 nights and Noah had a boat and he floated to safety after a year or so, and that was it. But if you get into the Hebrew of it and break the words apart like I do in my translational technique, and rabbis verify this, so I'm not telling you garbage, this is how it's done. When you break the words apart, like say the word or the name Melchizedek, you go Melchizedek into little portions and translate each of those. The Hebrew allows you to see much more about what's happening in the story. And in the tale of Noah, not only did it rain for 40 days and nights and then stop, but the fountains of the deep oceans broke open and flooded the earth with more water for another 100 and some odd days. That water was hot. It was coming from a layer just underneath the surface of the earth, about 15 miles down, in what today we call the Moho-Ravitch discontinuity. And that just means that seismic waves bounce off of it and things like that. And we know from data collected from these seismic meters that layer is occupied by a fluid like water that's hot, and it has 3.5 times the density of normal water, like it's got a lot of salts dissolved into it. Now, when you break open the fountains of the deep, what you're doing is you're opening holes down into that shell of hot water with salt water. Why would this come shooting up to the surface? Because at that time, the Earth was still in its expansion phase. And in the time of Peleg, which means the time of the dividing, of the splitting of the Earth, the separate continents, the core was pressing on the surface of the Earth as it expanded, and it was like hypodermic jets all over the planet and into the ocean beds, which is where the mantle is thinnest to get down to that discontinuity. So that was a period of time for Noah's flood when huge volumes of water pushed up through the oceans and swelled to incredible heights to sink mountains. If you try to say, look, melt all the ice on the planet and take all the oceans, there's not enough there to cover a 10,000-foot mountain. There's not. But if you take the volume of water down inside, just underneath the surface of the Earth, that could have been forced out, as the old documents say, then you have more than enough to sink every mountain if you wish. if it all came to the surface. I don't think it all did. But anyway, as things cooled off, the water eventually went back down into the moho. After the pressure of the expansion was over and it relaxed, there was a big enough cavity there that the water could go back into it.
Wow.
That was, something astounding just from studying the old languages, word by word, bit by bit of word, to get to the bottom of what they were trying to tell us in the ancient documents.
So your research and scientific research has proven, if you will, or confirmed the biblical history of the flood of Noah. One could say that, in addition to the rain, as you just pointed out, there were, geyser-type events taking place of steamy hot water coming up. Is that a fair statement, or?
That's right. And I think it was about 110 days thereafter, but, after the rain stopped. So it wasn't just that. It was the core of the planet expanding and the surface stretching. It's already happened in recorded history. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And it may have been, at that time, the Earth was 6,000 miles in diameter, or somewhere between 6 and 8. I mean, they had a length of their year back in those days of not 365 days, 360 days. There was a difference in how many days there were in a year.
Right.
So as the Earth expands, it's going to change the number of days in an orbit.
No, I didn't even. Wow, I didn't even think about that.
Time. Would this shorten time, make time? We know the Bible says that time will be shortened in the end time. People take it to mean one of two things. One, the days will be shortened, meaning the calendar could, we may not make it to December. Others say, well, time will speed up. That will be the shortening of time. What's your take on that, Stan?
It's an interesting question, Joe. I don't know. I've looked at that, and in the colloquial version, what did they mean at the time? Was it saying that unless those days, which were forecast to be, this many days until the end of that tribulation period, unless the number of those days was cut back or shortened, then all life would perish. Now, I tend to go with that one rather than the length of day changing, although it might, because the judgments we're talking about in the Revelation of John are going to come whether the day is long or short, unless what God decreed is the time of that period is cut short. I think that's what it means, because the disasters would still happen, in so many days, unless he cut the number of days and said, look, we're not going to do that. I'll cut the days. And it might be 45 days shorter than what we thought, but, who knows?
Okay. No.
There's a lot of stuff that's still got question marks in my mind, and, that's the beauty of it. There's a lot more out there to discover.
Yeah, indeed there is. With what we're seeing right now, and one thing that Holly sent me, and I was just amazed of your, I don't want to say prediction, but of your, I'll use the word prediction, and then you can correct me, but predicting where the earthquakes were going to be taking place across the globe, and your accuracy was astounding. What is?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No. I guess, how did you do that? I mean, what's behind that?
Well, back in 2000, it was back in 1995, when the internet was still young. I was looking at pretty pictures, scientific pictures on the internet, really entranced with the things, and I saw that the U.S. Navy over in Monterey, California, was putting up a map a couple times a day that showed the variation in the sea surface temperature, the anomaly they call it. And basically what that means is, here's a map of today's sea surface temperatures all over the planet, and we subtract from that the average temperature for the last 30, 40 years, and show how anomalous this temperature is in this part of the ocean. Well, that was fine, and I thought, well, those are pretty pictures. And I had Photoshop, in Adobe Photoshop, and I thought, I wonder what happened if you take those two anomaly pictures, one from the morning, one from the afternoon, and you subtract them from each other. What that'll show us the rate at which the anomaly is changing. Oh, that was, it made a nice colored, blue and yellow map with dots and things, and I was impressed, and I did that for a few days just for fun. And then there were some earthquakes that occurred. And on the internet, I was looking at USGS, and I thought, I wonder if those earthquakes occur in relation to any of those sea surface temperature anomalies. And sure enough, I thought, wow, about 60 to 70% of the time, they occur within a week where these spots are. And then I narrowed it down, and the spots only occur in the ocean, and the quake ones only occur where they're usually in the water on the coastlines. I couldn't see inland for an earthquake because there's no water there, no sea surface temperature. So unless at that time we didn't have the access to the land temperature in the morning and in the afternoon, whatever. So I couldn't do that. But I could tell on the coastlines, which is where most of the earthquake activity occurs on a regular basis. Now, why did this work? Well, I found that when you have a fault line like this, and it's about to split, go this way, or to go this way, or to go like that, it breaks a lot of the crystalline rock structures and produces a flow of electricity. It's usually high voltage, and that electricity, if you're looking at the surface of the planet here, that electricity goes up into the water and over to the other side of the fault line, like plus to minus. And when it does, it takes heat away from that spot on this side of the fault line and transfers it over to this side, making it warmer here and cooler there. And that is what I was seeing as what I call the butterfly diagram, which was a yellow butterfly here, blue butterfly wing here. And it showed that right where those met over a fault line, that's where it was about to release an earthquake. Now, it didn't always happen. And like at least 30% of the time, nothing happened or I missed them. Now, Holly and I we flew over to the States, to Monterey, to the naval station there at Zenmont, and we kind of, pushed our way into a secure area by coercion, and we tricked them a bit. But anyway, we got into the secure Cray facility where these maps were being produced, and I took my work there to show them and to say, look, guys, look at what I found. Maybe you can use this. And at that point, they took Holly and I back into, we actually met the programmer in charge of, taking the satellite data from the what they call the satellite constellation down into the Cray, processing it and putting those maps up. And he said, look, we can't officially endorse your reports, but I will tell you this, we'll visit your site every day. And not only that, you'll have about a built-in 30% error because we have buoys that fail. We have cloud cover, satellite imagery failure. So on average, there's about a 30% error. And that's the exact amount of error I was getting. So I said, well, okay, fine, thank you. Well, I went home and we continued to do put the maps together and Holly and put them up on the website until 2006. And late in 2006, the Navy decided, well, we're going to put new satellites up, make a new satellite constellation. We're going to get new computers, new software, and we're not going to produce those maps for the public anymore. Well, there's nothing I could do. They cut off my data source. I don't think it was, a nasty move, but they continued to use the technology, the electric, heat transfer to predict earthquakes themselves. I found that in a paper later, but I was cut off from sharing it with the public. Now, just normal, the way things change, and it became the software became an antique and wasn't worth redoing, according to them. Time passed until this year, and I could never find another high-resolution sea surface temperature anomaly map to do the forecast with. So I started looking for other kinds of data somewhere else that was high enough resolution and had the data in it that I needed to forecast quakes, and I did find one. Now, I'm not going to say over the air where it is because I don't want it to disappear, because it is hugely accurate. The first week I tried this, I got 90% of the earthquakes in that week with this forecast method. And it takes them from 24 hours to 5, 6, maybe 7 days sometimes ahead of time. Some of the bigger ones, it takes, about 7 days ahead of time. So I've been putting that up. I get the data in the mornings and process it and then analyze the data to find out where the most likely places are for the quakes. There are a lot more quakes occurring around the Ring of Fire in the Southwest Pacific as well. And I've been looking at South America, certainly Chile and Peru, all those areas down in there on the west side of Argentina. They're more significant earthquakes are occurring. But if you look at my pictures up there daily, you can click on it and you'll see a nice, colored map. And I put red circles around areas that are likely to go in the next 1 to 7 days. And you could check yourself with USGS and say, okay, Stanley's map said at this place, there's going to be an earthquake. Okay, I've got to look back, when the earthquakes occur, you look back to the date, maximum 7 days before, and come forward until you find a circle around that area. If you find a circle around that earthquake area, then my map predicted it. And I'm glad that the new software and stuff that I'm working with is allowing me to get better accuracy. It still means I will miss some. I miss some up around Kamchatka in eastern Russia. I don't know why it doesn't show there, but I'm trying to refine it to see why. Still, it is enough that if we have that huge Richter 9+ earthquake about to occur in the Juan de Fuca plate off of Washington and Oregon coast, that I can hopefully give people enough warning to start making arrangements for mitigating what happens with that huge earthquake and the tidal waves that follow. So that's just a public service.
And that's off your Threat Watch page, correct? At your website where people
think, actually, just go to the front page of the website.
Okay.
You go to the front page of the website, and under the book pictures, you'll see Stan's earthquake forecast and a little miniature map of seismic volcanic potentials. You click on that, and that takes you to the page that only deals with these forecasts. And there's an archive there showing, every day's forecast.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, okay.
Stan, there's something interesting in your book I found last time I was looking at it. It was about the number of earthquakes above, I think it was above 6.0, that we would receive in the 40s or 50s compared to today. I'm looking for it right now, actually, but I mean, it was a staggering number. It was like maybe 3 7.0s in a decade to what we see today.
Which book are you looking at, the Cosmic or the Dare to Prepare book?
The Cosmic Conspiracy.
Okay. Well, that portion of the book was written, I think in 1978. The last part in the appendices were written more recently. But one of the reasons that more earthquakes have occurred is because there are more monitoring stations set up all over the planet. I've talked with USGS about this, but they all concede that if a Richter 5 earthquake occurs anywhere on the planet, whether we have a sensor there or not, USGS can pick it up. Whether they report it or not is up to them. So the part of the increase in the number of earthquakes detected for a period of time in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, was due to more sensors being put out across the planet. But I do think that Richter 5 is a safe thing. No matter how many sensors you had, Richter 5 and above increase is significant. And certainly these go through periods of more, less. And Holly's got that. Holly, is that in the book or on the website, the earthquake maps, or the earthquake numbers that you put up? I forget where it is.
I got it right here. It's on page 51 of the Cosmic Conspiracy. It says that between the years 1987 and 1946, the average number of observed earthquakes over Richter 6 was 3 per decade. Between 1946 and 1956, the average jumped to 7. In the following decade, it went to 17. Then in 1967, the yearly earthquake figure for Richter 6 or better was 17. In 1968, it was 19. 1969 was 21. 1970, 24. 71, 34. However, during the decade from 67 to 76, there were 180 earthquakes over 7 on the scale! Exclamation point. Note that in the recorded history of man, an estimated 74 million people have been killed either by earthquakes or indirectly by their attendant fires, floods, landslides, and disease.
So, yeah.
And that's been updated significantly. I mean, Holly keeps records of these now for us, and with the numbers from the USGS, and somewhere on our website, I forget where it is, she updates periodically the USGS figures for this year, and the figures going back 9 years before that, averages, number of deaths, and whatever. And the argument has been, okay, the official argument has been, look, you can't count this as an increase in earthquakes because, we've been having more sensitive equipment and this, and that, and we admit it. But I get back to the point that they will admit that any Richter 5 or above, if you have one seismic detection center in the United States, just one. It should pick up a Richter 5 anywhere on the Earth and be able to pinpoint it reasonably close to where it occurred and the time it occurred. So that argument doesn't hold water. The thing that I think relates to biblical prophecy about an increase in earthquakes in these times is the fact that a lot of these big earthquakes are in populated areas now, instead of just being out in the ocean or someplace that's, an island's not going to worry about or that kind of stuff. These earthquakes are hitting population densities, and they are affecting commerce and life, when they do that. So there's an increase in that, and we are headed for one big earthquake, according to the Bible, and I believe it's coming, which will be a Richter 10 or better, and it's going to rock the whole planet when that happens. It's going to be big, and you can see that forming.
What would a Richter 10 look like?
I mean, look at Fukushima. What was that, a 9.1 they ended up leaving that as? Look at the damage in that. I mean, that wasn't even compared. Indonesia was, 5 times more deaths, but...
but...
It was pretty close, in intensity, but imagine 10 times that strength in an earthquake that connects. It's going to connect through Europe. It's going to connect into the Middle East. It's going to go through Indonesia, into China. It's going to go around the Ring of Fire to the United States, to South America. Imagine all of those potential quakes around there, all being triggered by one massive one. You'll have boom, and then boom, 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 all the other ones that were forming that will be released because of the shock from this Richter 10 or whatever. It's huge.
The comment in chat says a 10-point would be felt worldwide. Is that, you think that would be great?
Oh, yeah.
Man.
Definitely.
Yeah, they'd feel the rumbling in the International Space Station, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Where do you see the epicenter? Can you accurately say, it looks like a 10 would occur over where?
No, I couldn't, because two factors. One, if it is going to occur on a water coastline or in the sea itself, I might know about it a day to 7 days ahead of time by the signature maps if the data is still available. If it's going to occur over a land somewhere and the epicenter is going to be there, I have no data at this point that I can use to forecast, so I have no idea what to tell you. I do, however, know that there are a couple of areas in the world tectonic plate borders that could trigger such a thing, and one of those is in New Zealand, North Island, New Zealand, at Lake Taupo Caldera. That is under stress. It has been heating, and Ruapeu, which is part of that system, has, the sulfuric acid lake in the top of it has been bubbling from time to time. In fact, I flew over and photographed it here a few years back. But that area had a volcano in about 89 A.D., which threw up so much dirt and debris when it exploded that for 3 days in the northern hemisphere, in China, the astronomers reported 3 days of darkness following that. And it blocked out the sun in the northern hemisphere. Now, that is a big explosion. We have the potential there now forming again. We have the potential in Yellowstone on the northwest bend that has recently been monitored and still being monitored as a threat. So both of those areas could release an explosive shock which could trigger the earthquake. Whether it triggers it there or the New Madrid or in Indonesia somewhere, I don't know. It's very hard, Doug, to pick that with not enough data.
This might, again, sound like a really academic question, but I remember growing up listening to people saying, hey, California is going to fall off the map, and, of course, the jokes that come with that. But
today we hear about the New Madrid fault line.
But, yeah, is it possible for the physical breakup of the continental United States, either at the New Madrid fault or somewhere dumping California off into the ocean?
Sure is. There are two areas that I can see. If you go back to my show images page, the main page of that, and let me see which one of these you click on the top row. I think it's the key fault lines. Yes, the first image on the top row, key fault lines. I show you the rifts that are forming around the New Madrid, where earthquakes have formed in the Appalachians and also in the Mississippi River Valley there, where Missouri is. And you can click on those and see larger maps. to see the yellow outlines of the fault structures, the dikes that are, potentially going to fracture. And half, maybe a third of the country, the eastern third, could be separated by massive earthquake at New Madrid going up into the Great Lakes. There's another one, another way that the country may be affected by earthquakes in the California fault line system, going up into the western side of Yellowstone and up into the Juan de Fuca plate, offshore from Washington and Oregon. Those are going to be upset by a number of things, earth expansion and possibly triggering volcanic explosions all down the west coast, down into the Baja, or perhaps over into the Sierras, down into Mexico. Wow. These earthquakes, these volcanoes and earthquakes, could trigger other ones. But certainly that from California right up to Oregon, to Washington even, all that area there is potentially going to fragment when this kind of shaking takes place on the planet. And the New Madrid is another one running, kind of north-south like that. But there's another one that's a diagonal, which I show on this page, and it's called the lineament, Lineament, And the Lewis and Clark expedition actually discovered this, and it's a slip zone, a fault line, covered up by dirt and stuff that stretches from northern Florida all the way over to Washington State. You can see it in the diagonals there, and it shows where part of that fault has slipped in time. You can see the dotted lines where the eastern or northeastern side of the United States is slipped relative to the southwestern. That is another potential division point of the landmass of the United States. So the three areas, vertical on the coast and diagonal across the middle of the country, that are zones to watch for when earthquakes start occurring. I mean, it's wow. Where do you go to get away from all this crud? I mean, if you look down to the next to last row there, where earthquakes 1973 to 2012 are plotted, it kind of gives you a map of where these potential breaks could occur. And you'll see that living west of the Rockies is not a good idea at all. Look at that map and all the earthquakes. It just draws a yellow loop around that section of the United States. And, there's...
I'd rather worry about earthquakes than say I don't know if it's safe to live anywhere in the U.S. anymore with what we have going on, but
that's true. But
I'd rather be taken out by an earthquake than by the government.
Well, that's true. But folks, if you go to standale.com, show images, and what Stan's talking about is earthquakes in the lower 48, which is in the 1, 2, 3, fourth row down on the left. It's an impressive photograph, or not a drawing, a diagram. It looks like just by looking at this, holy cow, which matches all of the other graphs and diagrams and images you're talking about as well, with the diagonal and the I got it. And I'm surprised to see too northeastern Ohio having as many as they have.
We're seeing them all around. A couple 2-pointers in Youngstown this year, Ohio. They're all around us. We see the New Madrid, the sinkholes up and down where people say the New Madrid is, and I don't know if they're connected or not.
Well, if you don't mind, Stan, let's go back to the sinkholes for a minute. Earthquake activity and sinkholes related? Yes, is that?
Well, they may be now being caused by the same phenomenon, the expansion of the planet, but earthquakes have occurred over centuries, just due to the continental drift that's been continuing since the immediate expansion of the Earth back in the times of Peleg, or whenever it was that the continental mass split. But now it's coming back to the point where the earthquakes are not just from continental drift or subduction, whatever they want to say. It is also due to the current expansion rate of the core of the planet. And the sinkholes, well, they, in my opinion, they are definitely related, majority of them, to the expansion of the Earth and the lessening of the gravitational pressure on the atoms of dirt and stuff that hold the things together on the surface. I don't know much more I can say about that.
Well, no, I mean, that answers my question. And you mentioned something in there about gravity, and I know one of the listeners had a question, and this kind of sets up for a series of questions I have as well, and others. Is gravity, when you mention gravitational pull, is gravity a force that actually pulls, or is it a push?
It's both. It's both.
Okay.
Now, it was the only force that in general relativity and in modern cosmological physics, only force that's one directional, and it didn't make sense. Now, I've been developing graphics and animations and an argument to discuss this, why it is a two-directional force. Now, Joe, you've got my Cosmic Conspiracy book there. Mm-hmm. There's a section there on gravitation or gravitics where I have a little diagram of a trolley and water shooting up against the wall. And I don't know that I have that. I'm just checking now on that show images page. Let me just see if it's there. Yes, it is. If you'll go to the show images and click on the second row, third image, which is a picture of the Cosmic Conspiracy book, and go to that page, you'll see on the second line in the middle a diagram out of the Cosmic Conspiracy. Now, it's a simplification, but it shows you how gravity can actually be a two-directional force, pushing and pulling. Now, it's actually pushing from two directions, if you want to be technically correct about it. There's a tank of water in the diagram, and there's a pump that shoots water from one end of the tank to the other. And in between that pump and the other wall at the end is a little railway track and a little trolley on it. And that railway track will let the trolley be pushed to the other end of the tank by the pressure of the jet of water shooting on a board that's vertical on the tank, on the trolley. Now, if the piece of board on that little wheel skateboard, we're going to call it, if that piece of board on the end is solid, when the water jet hits it, it'll shove it all the way back up against the far end of the tank, won't it? I mean, just imagine your mind, you squirt a water hose on that solid piece of wood on the far end of the little trolley there, and it will force the trolley all the way to the end of the track and force it flat against the wall.
Right.
Now, if you try that, it will happen. Now take that same trolley, same tank, everything, drill a bunch of holes in that upright piece of wood on that trolley, and now shoot the water on it, and to your surprise, what will happen is some of the water will get through the holes and hit the wall at the far end of the tank before the trolley gets there, and they'll bounce back and press on the backside of the trolley's sail. This will make the trolley and the board gravitate to a position off of the end of the tank. It won't force it flat against the tank because some of the water is being reflected. They got through the holes and bounces back. And this is a simplification of what happens on the Earth. Pressure coming in toward the surface, going on through the mass on the surface, hitting itself in the core, bouncing back. And that means that gravity has specific radii or distances where it will be a certain strength. Gravity does not increase as you go down in the planet. If you drill a hole from here to the core of the planet and drop the rock, it would go down a certain distance and then stop and come back up a bit and vibrate back and forth until it found where it belonged in the gravitational wind that's pressing down and reflecting back from the core.
Wow.
They would call it specific gravity if this happened in the atmosphere with the helium balloons and stuff like that. You can fill a balloon with a certain weight of gas and it will go up a certain height, but no further. If you take it up higher in orbit and drop it, it will come back to that altitude where it belongs for its specific density or specific gravity, as they call it. But basically, all gravity is like that. The heavier elements are going to be in the core of the planet because that's where their heavy mass allows them to reside when the waves go through them and then come back. They're more massive inside.
All right. The basis for that, one of the basis for the question was related to, and you touch upon this in your book, but the gravitic devices or the anti-gravitic, or if that's the correct terminology, the potential for, I don't want to say UFO type activity, but military craft, we'll say, using alternative forms of propulsion or using gravity to I don't even know how to describe it, but capitalizing on our knowledge of gravity to assist in transportation. Is that something that's going on? I mean, do we have crafts that actually that we don't know about? Okay.
Yes. I was inducted into the program that was way ahead of me in 1971, and they sent me down to Australia to work under Captain Sir John Williams, who was my contact or control agent down there. But it was part of the electrogravitic research program that was headed in the United States by Dr. Edward Teller, and in Russia by Dr. Andrei Sakharov, and in England and New Zealand and Australia, other places, there were different chiefs at the head of the research projects. In the late 50s, early 60s, they started finding out that gravity could be altered using a combination of high voltage and magnetic fields and spinning fields, vortexual fields. They eventually developed anti-gravity or electrogravitic saucer craft in the 70s and certainly the late 60s as well. The progression was like this. They started using a flying saucer shape like that. And there was actually, I think I've got a picture of that that we can reference back on, show images, the home page, the main page of show images, third row down, and the image on the right, which has a flying saucer in it. You click on that, and you'll see some of the images I've generated to show people, how plasma craft and anti-gravity craft look from the outside, which helps me to explain how they work. Anyway, you'll see there about the third row down on the right, you'll see a brass or golden-looking flying saucer with a mushroom on the top and a gap, and then the rest of the circular wing. When I first started working on this design in the late 60s, I was talking about heating air and sending a high-voltage current through it so that it drove the air out that gap between the mushroom top, called the cupula, and the surface of the saucer itself, and that air come down and back underneath the craft, where a certain portion of it was reintroduced to the core, heating up the air, making it conductive, and blowing it back out, so that in essence you had a smoke ring effect like this around the lower part of the craft. And as you went forward, which was upwards or sideways like that, at a diagonal, it increased the flow rate of this, and so in essence you stored energy in a circulating, spinning field around your craft. They were already ahead of me in the projects Teller and the guys had long before I started doing that. They had gone through that stage and found out that when they superheated the air to make it a ionized plasma and shoot it around like that they had to have a seal up here, an air seal in that cupula region, and the darn things kept catching fire. They couldn't keep them cool. And so what would happen is the test craft would go out, and then it would catch fire at the seal ring up there, and black smoke would follow and form an envelope around the bottom part of the ship, and you were flying in a black cloud, which isn't too easy to navigate through. So they'd have to go down, and someone would have to come pick them up, another craft sit on top of it and connect and take it back to the base. And the other problem was when they did work, they were traveling so fast that, 5,000 to 6,000 miles an hour, you go to change direction, it was putting heavy G-forces on the structure of the craft and the crew. And if you've ever kind of, been in a craft flying real fast like that and go to change direction, real quick how it brings the blood out of you and how it makes your hands and your body just weigh 5, 6, 7 times what it normally would. You don't want to change directions like that all the time because it makes you real tired, and in addition to fatiguing the metal in your craft. So they said, we've got to figure out another way. There's got to be a better way to propel these in these plasma craft. Well, at the same time that they were doing this, the scientists in the back room were working on a way to generate the same kind of tornadic or, vortexual spinning, but not in air, but in magnetic fields. And in the process, they found out they were actually interacting with gravity, and they could create an artificial gravitational field by spinning a pulse direct current through the coils on the periphery of the ship. That sounds like a commercial break.
Yes, sir.
And we've already went through a whole hour with Stan Dale, our special guest. Today, this Thursday, January 3rd, 2013. I had to check my calendar. They're all screwed up. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We'll be right back with our special guest, Stan Dale. Stay with us.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the Internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Aileta Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the Internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the Internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood. KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
Hold on to your seats. The Hagmann and Hagmann flight is now taking off. Doug and Joe Hagmann have cleared the runway of TSA agents, jihadists, political crackpots, and global elitists. Now get ready for some real news. Here they are, Doug and Joe Hagmann.
Hey, welcome back, folks. You're listening to a very special Thursday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. For those watching on Christians United Broadcast Network, it's accessible via our website at HomelandSecurityUS.com. You can click on the Watch Live link that brings you to the picture. And once again, it's called for the blue dot to be over my image, but
this is a once in a what? When's the last time you were on video? 2 months ago?
It's been a while, and I've been working behind the scenes. But I wanted to be like Stan and be part of the video. Also to show off Christmas presents that we got. We're in matching suits, sans the ties, or matching shirts, I should say. No ties tonight. Just our Friday casual wear on Thursday. Actually, it's it's a Hagmann report. The logo on the
hole with the mug too.
Oh yeah, we actually, Santa Claus put a mug in our stockings. Closer, huh? It's Hagmann report. Sorry, Stan, we're taking your time, but just some Christmas gifts from this Christmas. But anyway, Stan, glad to have you back. And folks, if you're unfamiliar with Stan Deyo, then you haven't been alive for the last decade and a half. I got to tell you, we're honored to have you, Stan, and folks can visit your website at StanDeyo, DEYO.com. That's StanDeyo.com. Also, the Millennium Arc leads you to the same site. But your book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, folks, if you haven't ordered it, I would urge you just to order it tonight, because it's the information in this book is just tremendous. And also Holly Deyo's Dare to Prepare book. Wow. In fact, I lent it to my neighbor. This is during the holiday recess, if you will. And
no, if it's the same neighbor I'm thinking of, he might be using it as a coaster and stuff.
No. This is a different neighbor. And when it was yesterday, I saw him outside, and he said, "Oh man, can I keep the book for another week or so? There's just so much in here." And I said, "Well, you should order your own." So I hopefully I convinced him to do that. But Dare to Prepare and The Cosmic Conspiracy, two highly recommended books. And I say that we don't endorse books or products that we don't believe in, but
right.
Folks. The Cosmic Conspiracy. It's a book in here that has so much information. I just can't tell you how some of this information really changed my way of thinking. But Stan, welcome back.
Thank you, Mile. Yes, right. Okay, got it.
All right.
Right. What were we talking about before break? I forget now.
Well, we were talking about the anti-gravitic devices, the anti-gravitic transport devices, which... And I have to say that during one of the conversations I had with the intelligence source that I've got, was saying that, look, the anti-gravitic devices, the craft exist and they're being used. I mean, they're the terrestrial, they're from Earth, so people are seeing these, whatever they might be seeing in the sky, whether it be lights or shapes or whatever ships. They're earthly terrestrial vehicles.
Yeah, and I got to say, I've been watching the sky for years now, and I never saw anything like I did this year, starting really in May, June. I go out every night that it's above freezing and there's no clouds in the sky, or even if there's some clouds, to look at the stars. I have a nice telescope that my dad bought me a while back, and I have seen, and I have videotaped some very odd things. I can't explain it. I got the satellite trackers, I got Stellarium, I got Google Sky, all going at the same time, trying to figure out what is flying through the sky back and forth, different heights, different things, pulsating solid lights. It's different.
Yeah.
There's something going on.
Yeah, Stan, so I guess we'd ask this as lay people. Is the military or government or whatever, I mean, are some of these crafts flying around up there, taking advantage of this
electrogravitics?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, look, when I was recruited in the program, they were already, light years ahead of me. But because I was going to file a patent in the United States and start opening people's minds to this kind of what's called entrainment propulsion, which is an extremely efficient way to fly things or to move them underwater, they recruited me rather than deny the patent and tell me to be quiet. And I'm thankful for that, because they probably could have been heavy-handed about it, but weren't. Now, the program was worldwide, and it was being done by scientists, physicists, engineers, financed by private financing, all across the planet. As I said earlier in the program, the Russian director of this kind of research was Dr. Andrei Sakharov, who won the Nobel Prize but couldn't collect it because he was under kind of house confinement there in Russia and wasn't allowed to leave because he was the head of that project. Dr. Teller, on the other hand, could go to Australia, he could go to America, go to Europe, he could fly around with freedom. The development of man-made flying saucers did occur from about 1958 forward. I joined the research in 1971. What people will find hard to believe, I guess, is that we were not the original source of this kind of technology on Earth. Going back to the Sumerian records of the little g gods that came in their flying craft, and in India, the Vimana, these were beings that were not part of the human culture that we know. They were humanoid, and I suspect they were what the Bible calls the fallen ones, the fallen angels cast down from the heavens or parallel universe, however you want to couch that. But their craft were way ahead of us now, where we are now, way ahead of us then. And if you imagine this came from a culture, wherever they're located, whether it be in our galaxy that we can see, but in some distant place in the Pleiades or wherever, or whether it be in a parallel concentric universe right next to us, wherever they are so many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ahead of us in that technology, that what we're doing now with anti-gravity is like, a kid playing with a crayon trying to make nice pictures. We're just children in this. Our research was joined by some creatures that approached our people in the United States, and I think they probably did it in Germany during World War II, but changed sides after Hitler went down. These beings wanted to help us develop certain technologies in return for favors from us, which we thought was, our people thought was okay, and it was to do genetic testing on our livestock and our people. And there was to be a limit on how many people, this was done to what type of people. And immediately after this agreement was signed or agreed to between us and these creatures, they broke it, and they started taking a lot more people all over the planet and doing things that were quite bizarre. Now, it took me a while after I got out of the organization to figure out what this was all about really. We were mankind was being duped by these super beings. As I say, well, there's three structures of it. There's short gray critters, tall gray critters, and the tall humans that are, quite handsome and athletic, maybe 7 to 8 feet tall, and that have skin in the sunlight that if you see it sideways, it's like an oil film on it that makes rainbow-type colors off of the scaly portion of their skin. These beings are the fallen angels, I think, that the Bible speaks of, that are going to make war against the Messiah in the last days here. They created some soulless gray clones, or not clones, but cyborgs. These gray critters are biological robots, and that's why they're so, neutral emotionally when they go to cut people apart or stick probes up their nose or whatever. It's to them there's no emotion attached to it. They are part of a large chess game, a large deception that the leader of these fallen ones, Satan in the common language, is playing to fool the people of all religions, all cultures on this planet into accepting his new world order and his leader of that, whoever he appoints. The reason that these little gray critters have been allowed to afflict mankind since probably the mid-40s and onward is that it is to put into the minds of the public, the people, not the leaders, but the people of the planet, there are some strange things going on, and they're hurting people, and I'm afraid of them, and, why isn't our government telling us about them? Are they afraid too? It puts a fear factor into the populace of these things with super technology to do what this says they wish. This lays the groundwork for a time in our near future where the quote-unquote good guys, Satan's guys in these flying saucers, can fly over our cities, make contact, just like in the movie V, and say, look, you guys have been afflicted by these little gray critters. They get around the universe and do this a lot, and we're going to get rid of them for you. And at the same time, we're going to solve your problem with food shortages, weather control, incoming near-Earth objects that could destroy the planet, disease control, no more nuclear war. We're going to bring peace if you accept the way that we live where we are. And this grand deception will just, people will rush to it if they're starving, if they have no money, the world economy has failed, if there's a threat of a nuclear war, World War III, that would annihilate them in the Middle East, if the planet's earthquakes and volcanoes are going off and the infrastructure of the planet, the biological infrastructure is failing, people will race to someone who can solve it and not destroy us. They look nice, they're friendly, they're handsome, and they're coming and saying, look, we have the power to wipe out your planet, but we're not going to do that. We're going to help you. We're going to give you technology and help you. Well, who's going to argue with that? Now, Ken Johnson, that wrote the series on the V series, Ken Johnson had this encapsulated into a secular movie and then a TV series, and he did it extremely well. He even beats the bad guys in the first movie that he made, the bad aliens. They are defeated with a blood extract that came from the hybrid between a human and a lizard person, the off-worlders. And the blood from that child was then replicated, and it formed a red dust, and they sprinkled it over all the planet with, by going up in helium balloons or hot air balloons and dropping it out on these critters, and it killed them. The blood, the dried blood, killed the invaders. Now, this is a parallel to the blood of the Messiah cleansing you and saving you. You see what I'm saying? Johnson put these into his books. It's just astounding. And his last book, which has not been made into a movie, he even has a second race of aliens coming to dispose the first race that were the nasties, just like I'm telling you. And I'm certain from all the studies I've done, and I put this in the Cosmic Conspiracy just in 2010, from the book of Daniel, it tells us about an alleged alien God coming with his minions to solve Earth, but treat us like we're fodder, humans anyway. Anyway, that's in the book. If you've got it there, you'll see that there.
Yeah. In fact, we have it. And Stan, I mean, I don't mean to be trite about this, but or to be cute about it, but it reminds me of the Twilight Zone episode "To Serve Man."
Yes.
But it's. I think what I think it's important what you're saying here. Well, obviously it is, because
I want to back up a second. When you say that the grays and the different types of whatever these things are, I just refer to them as demons. Anything that is not of God, that is fallen spiritual, is
well, there's a difference between demons and fallen angels and stuff, and disembodied spirits. All those things are different, but they all are on the dark side.
Okay, all right.
It's semantics is all we're playing with here, Joe. It's just semantics. I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
So, and this kind of it kind of pulls some things together, because we're looking here. People might say, "Well, man, this sounds pretty far out, pretty far fetched," but you're looking at really the biblical. You're looking at biblical. It's in the Bible.
Yeah, it's all there. The changes to the earth,
all of this is that we're talking about. I mean, go ahead. Earth changes. Signs. I mean,
the signs in the sun, the signs in the sky. We're seeing those. Stan, I don't know if you saw recently, there was I think last year, mid-year, there was a disc that when you took the Soho images and put them into fast motion, it looked like a ball or a UFO shot off the sun. There was another one of those just recently, and I think they explain them as plasma balls. Plasma
arcs, yeah.
Okay. Is that an actual phenomenon that happens on the sun?
Yes, it is. It's not common, but it does occur that way, and it's an artifact, a visual artifact that you see, because it forms such a distinct border, around that dark space, that circular space. But it's the magnetic arc going back around and reconnecting with the surface of the sun. And when part of that disappears, it looks like there's an object there. But if you stop and think about it, consider the size of the sun and the size of an object that would really be. I mean, that would be ripping the surface of the sun apart in that area because of the gravitational mass attraction. That's not happening. There's a lot of things. I'm sure you've got stellarium, Joe. I had somebody send me a photograph from California on the beach there. They'd taken, I think it was earlier this year or last year now, and they said, "Look, here's Planet X at sunset. You can see it here. I've taken this photograph of it." Well, okay, I went back, I got Stellarium. I said to the guy, where were you standing when you took the picture? What time of day was it? What was the date? And I rotated Stellarium to that point, and what was it? It was the moon, not another planet. But people went off half-cocked, hysterical. Planet X is out there, and they're not telling us. We have to check this stuff.
Yeah, just recently when Jupiter was real close to the moon last month, people were freaking out. I saw it all over message boards on the internet. Like, what's the big star by the moon? And you just, if you were to open if you know where you live, what hemisphere you live in, and what time of the year it is, you can look into anywhere on the computer, do your research, and find out exactly what's in the sky.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I'm just going to add to what Joe's saying is that people need to try to use the internet or other sources, family sources that are astronomers or physicists, to check these things out before they get all carried away and start, numerous email letter chains of panic, and it discredits serious efforts to try to find out what's going on in the world around us. So, you and I, Joe and Doug, we need to put a lid on all the hysteria on various subjects and look at the facts as best we can to keep credibility and to actually get to the truth of what we're seeing.
Yeah, we know deceptions will be one of the. Well, Jesus mentioned that twice when talking about referring to the last days, that deceptions will be many and will come in many forms, and that we need to be aware of these deceptions. And talking with somebody today, I was reminded of a verse. I don't even know where it is, that people will miss the word of God or miss the simplicity of Christ, and about breaking down all these the Sandy Hook shooting, trying to find out what's going on with this and that. People are really missing what is important, I think. But I just want to make that point. And
we're getting caught up in the minutia of the earthly events, and I get so many emails a day, and so does Holly, and I'm sure you do too, about, well, we need to get this petition against that going on, and, come on. We're way past that kind of stuff. We don't need to be bogged down in stuff that's not going to bear fruit. There's no way that petitions are going to do it.
I would be on that point. Which kind of brings me to another larger question, and maybe this is too big of a bite to take, but Stan, here we are. It's 2013 now, and we've passed the obviously the Mayan date and such, and but we've got so much deception all around us. I mean, regardless of what the subject matter is, it seems like
every government, every media.
Yeah. This being right now, January 3rd, 2013, where do you see us? In terms of, one thing that I've been studying very recently and really getting into is the subject of the Illuminati, the hidden power behind the powers that we can see.
Yeah, and I'll verify that. He is really getting into this stuff.
I'm going down so many rabbit holes here, Stan. I got to tell you, man, I every time I turn around, I'm looking at bloodlines and biblical bloodlines, and just trying to figure things out. If you don't mind, if we can get into the Illuminati a little bit, because your book, once again, folks, Cosmic Conspiracy does. We're looking at a new world order dawning here, are we not?
Sure. If you just look at the history of mankind, there were groups, tribes in the beginning, and tribes coalesced into nation states eventually. And as the book of Daniel and the dream vision of Nebuchadnezzar about the man standing there, with gold and brass and iron and these various things on it, it showed the history of the major empires that would form. Now, the empires form because in these tribes or nation states, there are people that are smarter, clever, or just more powerful than the average Joe, and they collect the assets or the money of that. They control the assets and money of that nation. And then when their nation is overthrown or merged into another one by whatever, there is a new group of, super wealthy, powerful people in that new nation state, which is now bigger than the former two. And as time passes, these groups of nations fight, win economically, militarily, and they get to smaller and smaller numbers of nations, but larger and larger collectives within them. Now, it is a natural order of things that those who are clever and who have control of the economy and the energy of a nation are the rulers. That's just the way the game is played. It's the same as when you're in high school, the football team ruled the social set. And the Illuminati are basically, as a genre, they are the wealthy, elite ruling class of the planet. And we have a rising member, or a group that wants membership in the Chinese sector. The Western nations have had it for some time. For at least 200, maybe 230 or 40 years, it's been in formation, to where the leaders of these nations, the wealthy, the industrialists, the bankers, have gotten together and looked at mankind as a planet and looked at the planet as a whole, as a biosphere, trying to figure out a way to maintain life on the planet and employment for the people, but not have too many people, not destroy the planet. And they realized with their access to scientific reports and groups of researchers that certain things had to be done to avoid the collapse of humanity from its own living, its own waste, and its own consumption and energy and things like that. So the Illuminists, enlightened ones, basically have formed in the ancient days by men who wanted to save man from himself by organizing mankind into a structure where there's no more war and that kind of stuff, and where there's a common economy across the planet. This got polluted way back in the probably the late 18th century. Supernatural type stuff, clandestine meetings where demons or other kind of, not human entities were called up to enforce or to give them the people power in the Illuminati to get things done. And this was just a bad step. And since that time, the Illuminati have not been an altruistic group of men trying to solve planet Earth, peacefully. They are power grabbers. I can see you're looking at something there. What are you looking at, Joe?
We're looking at your chart, Road to Illuminism, in your Cosmic Conspiracy, page 95. It's chart 6A. It is chapter 6, Circles of Illuminati, and we are looking at what you have here under your chart 6A, Roads to Illuminism. And just one thing that caught my eye here is you have this that breaks off from I think it goes comes down. And it all leads pretty much. I see a lot of the Masonry is in here, Freemasons, in the order of the Freemasons, the Great White Brotherhood, the Illuminati. You have on one side the Jesuits. On the other side, you have anti-Jesuits. On one side, the same side, you have Jesuit, you have mystics. On the other side, you have mechanists. Right, yes. Mechanists. You have Illuminati in the same part. In the other part, you have Alumbradios. Alumbradios?
Alumbrados, yes.
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
And then Sons of Darkness, and then Sons of Light. Under Sons of Light, you have a bloodline of Moses,
Aaron, Joshua, and so on. And when Stan, we've been talking about the Illuminati and about the powers behind the powers and such, and the bloodlines, and it really doesn't matter what us normal people, as I like to call us, believe. It matters what they believe to be true, that they're the descendants maybe of, and I think my research suggests that some believe that they're descendants of Jesus himself, and this is going to be part of the grand deception when this comes in. But I love the way you break down the Illuminati,
the invisible government.
I've never seen it broken down like this in this fashion before. And we can hear, Stan and I was on with Alex Jones talking. You hear about the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and you go back to Weishaupt and such. But you do a really beautiful job of tying everything together, how this all fits together.
There's also the seal of the dollar bill, the back of the dollar bill in here. And I know you had questions about that.
Yeah, and I talked to Stan off air today, and he kind of, but people have this curiosity when we start talking about this, Stan, of like how all of this stuff we're talking about, how it all fits together, and it does. It ties in with the Bible, and even some of our listeners sent questions about the alleged bloodlines and such. And
I see people in the chat room talking about the actual an RH blood type. I've heard of that before. But yeah, there is an invisible government. These people think they do really rule the world through their mechanisms of establishments they've set up all throughout history, like the Masonic order and everything else.
I guess
the religions, the false religions that they've set up.
How does this tie into the Bible, Stan? And maybe that's too big of a question again, but do these people really believe that they're the bloodline of Jesus, where Jesus and Mary Magdalene went off and had offspring?
The Holy Grail type thing, the Merovingian bloodline.
Yes.
Maybe some of them do. Not all. I would think that some of the kings and queens of Europe probably secretly think that, or maybe even openly think that amongst their friends and family. The Illuminati. Well, how do I explain? The Freemason, for instance. Freemasons at the lower 3 degrees, first 3 degrees, are ordinary guys trying to do a good thing in a community. And from those, within the hierarchy of the higher elements, the higher ranks of Freemasonry, there are 3 major branches of it. But anyway, there's a group of people that look at the rank and file, first 3 degrees. They say, now that guy is in a position that we need to have someone in, and he is bright enough to do the job we want him to do. Let's bring him into the next level of our circle of secrets. And that they recruit out of the Freemasons into a higher, clandestine order. And not all Freemasons are in that order, only a few percent. So when you talk to Freemason about the Illuminati, the plot, and you guys are all worshiping the devil, they will just think you're nuts because they're trying to do a good thing, okay? And I have a lot of Masonic friends, that even up to 18th degree and some higher, that I've been able to discuss this with without, throwing things at each other. The problem with a secret society like that, Adam Weishaupt figured this out. You can join that secret society, and then when you're clever enough, you can recruit from that secret society members into this separate section and say, look, now you can't tell the lower ranks this because it's a secret. So if you want to stay and work with us, you can't tell them. And so because of its secretive nature, you can mine or strip off the cream of the crop that you want for making this global world order. And that's how it's happened. So I have no problems with dealing with Freemasons. I've been, they're not supposed to ask you to join, but I've had a number of them even take me into, the super library, if you wish, of their secrets, where I couldn't write anything down or photograph it or photocopy, but I could remember as much as I could from reading books, where I was allowed to see the secrets and stuff, because they came from what I found. So would I ever be a Freemason? No, because I would have to swear an oath, and I don't do that. And there are a number of other reasons and some of the branches of it. But anyway, so we can't go out and just, put Freemasons on the stake, and burn them at the stake. It's not a profitable thing. Right. However, you've got people that are in the White Brotherhood. You got people that are in modern witchcraft, white witchcraft, all kind of stuff, which is really bizarre stuff. And those I'm particularly worried about. Scientology is another branch that's something got leadership in it that I have to worry about.
Yeah, the Kabbalah, Scientology, these New Age religions that are popping up all over the place. We see almost perfect timing, like they are ready to pull out this mass deception of the people. And it is very complex, from what I understand, from what little I do understand about what the Illuminati is. I actually found a book I bought for my dad for Christmas. It's a history of Freemasonry in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
It's got everything from the oaths to how much money they spent each year on each project they did.
It's kind of like this corporate compendium for this area. Which
there's some weird things in there, though.
Stan, I got to tell you, man, it's
40 winks. Like, they make these weird references to weird phrases, and it just things don't sit right with me. Even though it says in there, in that book, you put your community first, your family first, everything first before you. You're last. That's what they say. It's almost like I don't believe that's what they follow.
But yeah. But the thing is, and boy, I'll tell you, we can go down so many rabbit trails here. But I guess looking at the bigger picture, Stan, and talking with others, when you've got the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, it seems like throughout history we've got this controlled opposition, which you wrote down there. Mm-hmm. This funding both sides, for example, funding both sides of World War II, same families. Are we not? Is not the Illuminists? Are they not?
The World Bank, the IMF, the Rothschild.
Is this not
central banks?
The grand deception we're seeing. I mean, is this not part of it? Are we not being set up by these people? The worthless government.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because originally, before we had discovered anti-gravity and stuff like that at the middle of World War II, middle of 40s actually, 1945 to 47. In that period of time, after we dropped the atomic bombs and the world had seen what terrible destruction that made and what the potential for wiping out the world would be in the future, a group of thinkers, a think tank, got together in the United States, and they gathered people from Russia, from Europe, from both sides of Germany, New Zealand, Australia, Norway, Canada. They gathered this think tank together, and it was outside of government, obviously. But what they were trying to do was figure out how we could solve the planet and get rid of warfare and get rid of these threats from nuclear war, for instance. They had seen that forcing people like Hitler did, grabbing France, for instance, squeezing hard, oppressing them, didn't work because the French resistance, slipped through the fingers and blew up bridges and interrupted supply lines and made life terrible for them. And once, you force people as dictatorially, it didn't work. And they'd already seen that the League of Nations, which was a small early version of the United Nations, could not agree on what kind of tea to have today, much less important issues. And then when you put 196 member nations later into the United Nations, they knew what would happen. You would have cultural, economic, religious, all kinds of differences that would not yield. So what was the third alternative, Alternative 3? And that, Alternative 3, was to fool the people into accepting a new world order that had no roots to any religion, culture, or nation. That means an extra-human or extraterrestrial, perhaps, threat. Could they invent aliens and with such power that it scared the heck out of the people of the earth? Not the leadership, it's the people that count. Could you scare them into thinking they have arrived over our major cities, they have mile-diameter craft that is impossible to fly, but here they are, and are they going to kill us? Are they going to be friends? We respect them. That's what they want to do. Alternative 3 was to engineer this. They got a little help in the late 40s, early 50s. Real, quote-unquote, aliens arrived. Nothing more than stuff that Satan had put in the mix to do the same thing. But we were planning to do it. Our Illuminists were planning to do this to get people to overlook their religious and economic and cultural differences long enough to try the New World Order. Didn't have to negotiate, they submitted. This is like when we were kids. I've told you this before in the past. My brother and I, we would have fights in our bedroom, and especially at bedtime, they throw pillows at each other and, make a lot of noise. And Dad in the next room would really get frosty about this. And finally would yell, if you don't stop that and go to sleep, I'm coming in with the belt. And this belt was something that had meat-cleaving hooks on and could tear the flesh off your body, we were sure. Never saw it, but that was the threat. Now, if you're fighting, like we were occasionally, well, more than occasionally, the door would be closed. We think we're safe. Dad would hit the door. Bang, open it came. In came Dad, and you were dead. Suddenly, your warring brother and you were good buddies. Oh, we're not fighting, Dad. Hey, how you going, Glenn? How you? Fine, Stan, fine. Okay, night, Dad. We see you in the morning. You force these warring nations together by a super authority that has the power to do you mischief, real serious mischief. This is what the alternative truth was all about. Now, when Satan does that, he's going to add something else to it in saying, I'm the God that created you.
Mm-hmm.
And you will worship me in time when you understand. I can even show you, he says, videotapes of the crucifixion of Jesus. I was there. Now, this is possible. We can talk about time dilation all you want, but that a being living at that time could move forward in time without aging a lot and be here today and have actual footage of the crucifixion of Jesus.
Yeah,
any historical event you want.
Yeah, they have the holograms now that can make people appear out of nowhere. They got the technology to fly undetected.
Is that what you're referring to, like a hologram type thing, or
oh, I'm sure they could. It will be a visual audio representation record of what happened back then that you can prove was in the location that we now know as Jerusalem or, whatever. And it could be any historical battle or place that you wanted to be. They could have records of it and show you. And this would impress most people.
Well, yeah, those that don't read the Bible, I would say, because it says, very clearly that Jesus will come back as like lightning from the east to the west, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll tell you what you're looking at Matthew in page 275.
27.
Yep, that's it. That's right, on page 275. And it warns you there about, then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is the Christ, or over there is the Christ, don't believe it. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and they shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they should deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before, if they say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, meaning he, the Messiah, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers. Don't believe it. For as the lightning comes out of the east and shines even to the west, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, Satan is not Yeshua, Messiah, Jesus. He is not that. He is restricted to the technology he's got here on earth and that his minions and him have built up in our underground facilities, which they kicked humans out of in the late 70s, by the way. And so he's limited to what technology he can build here on the earth from our infrastructure that we turned over to him.
Another thing I'm going to throw out here. Whoa. Satan is trying to be like the Most High. He is trying to duplicate what God has done, and he can't do it. That's why he is trying to be like the Most High, but will be tossed down.
I'm still hanging on Stan's words about the underground facilities and being Satan kicking man out.
Yeah, I just want to simplify it. Well, the reason why he's doing it, I just wanted to give the reason why Satan is doing this.
Can we revisit that, though, Stan, what you just said?
Sure. As I said to you, in the early 50s, there was a treaty, at least one, that was struck between humans and these alleged alien gray critters, which were Satan's minions that he had created. Now, the treaty was to give us technologies that we could use to, better mankind, whatever. And these bases for this, there's one at the South Pole, which you have to get to by submarine, and there were some in Australia and other places, all underground. And some of the bunkers that were left over from World War II in West Germany, I think it was, they've never been open to the public. They've been sealed off, and they were doing their first tests of the electrogravitic craft in a German, bunker that was left over underground in West Germany. In fact, one of my associates here in the project, he was a guard on duty at the time, explaining how it went. Now, that technology was enhanced by what Satan's guys gave us, and Our guys did not know that was Satan. They thought he was a real, off-worlder, and they'd met aliens, and life was going to be wonderful. They didn't have to make a fake alien invasion. It was here already. And before I left the organization in '74, Sir John was telling me and Sir Henry at lunch one day there in Melbourne that they were moving in, and he was talking about. It took me a while to figure it out, but he was talking about the off-worlders, the satanic ones, who were pushing us out of our bases. They were getting more and more aggressive until they finally, in the late 70s after I left, kicked us all out. And Sir John took my records, my data that they had there of me in the project, all that was destroyed, and on some other guys in England that were like me. And but there was no record of us for people to follow up to try to keep us from talking. They wanted what information we had at that time personally to get out, to let people know what was happening, even though they were going down. Sorry, there was a four-legged member of the family contributing there.
Well, invite him on in.
I need one of those mute buttons on my headset.
It worked. Anyway,
yeah,
that's what happened, and we lost control of our joint facility bases all over the planet. Which ones are still functioning? I don't know. But we do still have electromagnetic and things like the Aurora craft. Some of our submarine technology perhaps would use some of this technology, but stealthily. We have not been able to build up forces, I don't think, to equal what the satanic forces have. For instance, how do you make a mile wide flying saucer fly super fast? I mean, how do you make a mile wide flying saucer or rectangle or cigar-shaped thing that doesn't fall apart from its own weight? Do you realize how much force would be on the steel beams in a thing that was a mile long in the air? As you go to turn a corner or you go to change altitude, I know how it works. I know exactly how it works, and it's not a problem. But this kind of technology, we've not been allowed to control ourselves. I believe that the satanic ones have prevented us from getting large forces to fight them. Now, I also believe this is going to be a little bit of a shock to the Illuminati on the planet. They've been running things their way for a few hundred years, or a couple 150 years, something like that. And now that Satan is here and in charge of the game behind the scenes and going to come and unify the planet, they will help him because they have no choice. What they don't realize, or probably most of them don't realize, is that they are going to be executed by Satan because they are the traitors. He doesn't want them. He doesn't want them messing with what he's doing. They will be taken care of as the Russians and the communists do when they overthrow a government. The traitors, the ones working against the governments and stuff, they're gone. And if they were going to betray mankind, Satan's going to say, well, look, you were going to betray mankind anyway. It's my game now. You're dead. So the Illuminati are going to get a strange, sad awakening when he takes over. Okay,
I agree. And that's something I talked about, that the Antichrist and the false prophet could come, crush the Illuminati, pose as the saviors, and have people falling for the deception that they fixed everything.
Yeah.
And it would look so perfect. All the problems would be gone. They destroy them the way the monetary system is, restore peace. People will start believing.
Well, yeah, and so they push a button up there in their flying saucers, and all the nuclear weapons on the planet don't work anymore. Wow. Great.
Wow, that's right. And
the deception built on deception, built on deception. Yeah, that's why we focus on the word.
Exactly, and it's amazing to me, Stan. Here we are talking, spending tonight's program talking about these issues, and to me, once you get into these issues, everything else is boring. I mean, how can people talk about political theater when
football? Yeah.
When this is so real and
in your face.
So we've got, just so I'm clear on this, we've got Satan on earth. How can I put this? We got orchestrating
the shadow government, I would say, to do what they want. To knowing he's going to come in and destroy them later, supposed as a savior. We know that somebody's going to have to to destroy this system and
how do we
the
even
Savior.
But who else can speak like this?
Accepted worldwide.
But we sound like we're a bunch of Looney Tunes.
Well, to people who haven't read the Bible, maybe. But
Well,
read
true.
the Bible,
That's true.
you understand that there is a one world government. There is the beast system that will be upon the earth, and all the rich and the poor, the free and slaves, will all have to worship the beast and take the mark of the beast, or not be part of the system, be killed, whatever.
No, and Stan, I didn't mean to sound like saying that you're sounding like, it's just, to me, it's complicated. I mean, or not complicated, but intense, I guess. It's really intense when you start getting into this.
Doug, look, here we are in 2013, and people still call us mad for talking like this, but, kind of socially mad. They're not saying, that you need to be locked up or anything. But can you imagine what reception I got and my dad got back in 1960s when we talked about this?
Oh, my goodness.
Can you imagine?
No.
You try to talk to somebody who's not, who's too plugged into the false reality, this false society we live in. Anybody, that believes in the materialism and the reality TV shows and bases their life around all this theater rather than what is real.
Well,
exactly. If you would try to explain one sentence, Well,
I got to hear from Stan, though. What kind of reception did you? I mean, they had to look at you like you butterflying that time, right? I mean, huh?
Or I guess because Dad and I knew we were right and had the proof of it that, and we had a very small circle of friends that were also aware. In fact, I've got to tell you about my dad. I have this story on the Stan's Corner page there. It's about my dad in the tribute to him that I gave at his funeral. Have you ever heard of Charlie Wilson's Private War over Afghanistan?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. My dad beat him by doing it in 1945 to 1947 before the CIA had formed. Dad was in charge of a bunch of Army Air Corps men in North Africa, in Iran. He shared a base with the British contingent that were left there after the end of World War II. Now, Dad and this British contingent were funded under the table. Money was flown out once a week by Howard Hughes and his TWA aircraft that had clearance in the area to pay all of Dad's men and the British men to stay on that base after the official end of war, in hostilities and no challenge to the Russians. And the whole deal was to fake the Russians so that they thought there was an official military base there. Uniforms were changed only by changing the patches. If up close you look at it, didn't say U.S. Army Air Corps or, the British or whatever. It was fake patches that at a distance looked like the real deal. They had dog patrols. They fired a cannon in the morning, for reveille. They had flights over areas. They met with the local sheikhs. And the whole objective was to keep the Russians from grabbing the oil fields then, as they were trying to do by going into Afghanistan and fighting the Mujahideen to go down into the Middle East and capture the oil, and it would have been a different world. My dad was the first Charlie Wilson Private War.
Wow. Okay.
You can read about it on the website. But anyway,
wow. I mean,
we're almost at the top of the second hour. Stan, you want to come back tomorrow?
Yeah, you want to come back for the rest of the week? I mean, or next week? Holy cow.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Stan, I mean, you're connecting some dots for me and putting this in. I mean,
thank you, Stan.
You just can't believe how much you've helped. In fact, we are up against the top of the hour, and to please the stations, the AM stations that do simulcast us, for once we're going to be on time with the break.
All right.
Let's do this now. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this, the third day of January 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann, and with me is my son Joe Hagmann, a very special guest, Stan Deo, StanDeo.com. That's StanDeo.com.
Get his wife's book, Holly Deo, Dare to Prepare, or his book.
And his book.
Yeah, The Cosmic Conspiracy. What's this, the 10th edition?
Final edition, 2010. Folks, we're right back after these messages. Stay with us.
If you're stumped, you don't know what kind of gift to give to a friend or a loved one, I'm telling you, you must go to 4physics.com. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. This is your one-stop shopping palace. That's the only way I can put it. I could spend easily an hour on this website. Innovative, fun, educational. There are games, books, weather instruments, unique time-telling devices, jewelry, optical devices, laboratory equipment. Let me give you an example. We all know we can tell time with a sundial. You've seen those advertised. Did you know that you could tell time by the stars? At 4physics.com, you can buy a horologium nocturnum. This was a navigational device used in the 15th century by navigators at night to tell time by the stars. It's beautifully crafted in the shape of a pendant made of bronze and pewter or gold and silver. Absolutely a stunning gift. I would be proud to give it to anyone. You must go to 4physics.com. Even if you're not stumped, that's 4physics. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. It's your one-stop shopping palace. Any problems that you have, I don't know what to get Grandpa, I don't know what to get my loved one, that's unique, you will find it at 4physics.com. Please take my word for it. Go to the website, but give yourself a lot of time because you're not going to want to leave. 4physics.com.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood. KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
Doug Hagmann. One guy that doesn't need a bullhorn to get your attention.
You want answers! I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Is my video still coming through?
Not to what I can see. No, I see a picture of you. No.
All right, I'm going to hang up and call you back. Hold on.
All righty.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is hour number 3 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report with our very special guest, Stan Teo.
He's going to be joining us once we get the video feed back up. We have been
We can't answer his call. He's calling us. He's got to get a hold of Troy. Troy, if you can hear us, can you call him? We'd appreciate it.
Yeah. I don't think we can.
Go ahead. Thank you, buddy.
Live radio and overlapping with video. Folks, if you can get in the video, definitely do so, because it adds an element of like a roundtable discussion.
Yeah.
Are you there? I'm back now.
All right, Dan.
Sorry about that.
Oh, man, that's all right. We want to thank, and folks, for those just joining us, we've got our special guest, Stan Dale, standale.com. I would urge everyone to add to your library his book, The Cosmic Conspiracy. The information in that book is priceless, along with Dare to Prepare, Holly Dale.
It's like that book, The Cosmic Conspiracy. I learn new things every time I read it and go through it. And
in fact, we have a rule: does not leave the office or the studio, because
we're very particular about that.
That's right. I love my books. But anyway, welcome back, Stan. And folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on the Christians United Broadcasting Network, and our website is HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. We broadcast every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. All right.
I think proper for this third hour is to ask Stan, what is on your radar? What is on your mind? What are you focusing on right now?
Well, I am trying to finish this paper on the nature of gravity. It's part 2 of a series of 3 I've been writing for the last 3 years, to show people some tests that we've been doing all over the planet to interact with gravity and to explain how it works. And I just steal time from the day, it's just hard to steal time. But anyway, and then I'm working on designing and testing 2 or 3 types of ways to get free electricity out of the atmosphere or out of the wind, using very low-tech systems and wire, high voltage generators, motor generator kits, things like that. Things that, in case of an EMP, you could scrap together pieces from the junkyard and make it work. I feel this is more important than all the exotic solar cell type technologies and diesel generators and gasoline, because they age and die. And in fact, I found out that about only 3%, I think it is 3 to 4% of the solar panels sent into the United States from China actually pass the working test to see if they're going to hold up to the stresses here. I've been getting reports in now that in the last few months of people that are saying that their solar panel systems aren't delivering the power anywhere near what they used to because they're failing. It's substandard manufacture, and the Chinese are probably laughing all the way to the bank with our money and giving us a product that's breaking. So that's why I'm looking at alternate technology with some friends of mine to try to help people. It's not something we're going to be making and selling. We will photograph it, we'll document it, and we have a way to release it rather widespread. And people will then have the technology to put together themselves. And that way we're not breaking any laws, and we don't have to worry about a patent or patents. Oh, by the way, I filed a patent in 2008 on the basic structure of the atmospheric antenna system that Morey used, and I figured out how he worked it. And I went through all the rigmarole and filed with the patent office, filed provisional and everything. And eventually the patent office got back and said, oh, this can't work, so we're not going to give you a patent. I thought, well, okay, fine, you're entitled to that opinion. According to law, they are supposed to take your patent, which was not approved, and file it away in a box, lock it up, and it's never released to the public in case you want to file an amended patent, right? Even today, you could go onto the U.S. Patent Office, and they have my full patent application online for you to view. So patents are useless anyway. But the dirty devils, they don't grant me a patent. They don't keep it secret. They put it out there for everybody to see and use anyway. What kind of madness is that? Anyway.
And meanwhile, we allow foreign governments access to our patent office and information.
Including our medical information.
It just doesn't make sense. You're right. But you mentioned something that kind of piqued my interest, given the fact that we operate a studio here. and seeing our electric bills, which with the lighting and the cameras and all the equipment, holy cow! Free energy, if you will, or nearly free energy that caught my attention.
And those familiar with the work of Nikola Tesla, this was something that he had come up with, from what I understand, a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Sam. What's that?
Nikola Tesla did start researching and testing equipment to get energy from the sun directly and convert it to electric power, which he could rebroadcast. His Wardenclyffe Tower project, which was funded by J.P. Morgan, was canceled once J.P. Morgan figured out that he was going to be rebroadcasting electricity free to the world from that point, and there was no way to meter it. He couldn't make a dollar off it, so he canceled it. Now, Tesla's papers, there are a lot of them that are public. There were some of them that were taken from the safe in his room when he died, and some that were in his effects, and that were taken into effects by the custodian of alien affairs, not alien off the planet, but just aliens to the United States. And I have had the great privilege of going through a number of his papers in Belgrade, in the top floor there, where they're all under lock and key, and they lock you in a room, and for a certain amount of time you read, and you can't write or copy, and it was just like the Freemasons, basically. But he did develop an idea about putting a sheet of metal up on top of a tower and having sunlight strike it, and that would produce, convert the photons into electrons, the photoelectric effect that Einstein eventually talked about, so that you could convert that into electricity, kind of like a crude solar cell. Now, his work was expanded during his lifetime by Dr. T. Henry Murray in Utah, Salt Lake City, which you mentioned, Joe. The technique is fairly simple, but a little bit tricky to control. In essence, what Tesla was looking at, and what Dr. Murray was looking at, was a way to make a device here on the surface of the Earth that would connect mechanically to pressure waves, bombardment of the solar wind, the proton particles bouncing off of our electromagnetic field and our magnetosphere. Now, people don't realize, but that's occurring at millions of times a second, randomly, bang, 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 like that. And these form pressure waves that have different vectors, they add and subtract, all through the atmosphere, the magnetosphere of the planet Earth. And when that happens, it affects the subsurface electric currents of the Earth, called telluric currents, and those guide thunderstorms. I mean, these are powerful connections between the solar wind and the electric field flowing all the time underneath the Earth and guiding huge electrical storms. Now, what Morey did, building on Tesla's work, was he put an antenna up, an insulated wire, stretched it between two poles, went about a third or fourth of the way in from the end on one side, and ran the wire down to his box, and was able to capture and convert about 5,000 watts of power continuously, day and night. Now, he made the observation in his notes, Morey did, that in the daytime, if you were getting, say, 5,000 watts from the antenna, as you went to the nighttime side of the planet with your system, the power dropped off to maybe 3,500 watts. And people kind of thought, well, okay, that's odd, but didn't think about it. And the reason was because the solar wind is hitting the sun side, the strongest vector waves mechanically are there to influence the antenna. And if you go to the dark side, you're still getting pressure waves from the sun side, but not as strong. Mm-hmm. So it works day and night, 24/7, a great source of energy. Now, his antenna was an insulated wire, and between the two poles that supported it, or on the ends of the wire, were high voltage standoff insulators. It developed a high voltage. And he noted that the more power he used, when he drew it down, the more power he could draw, because it polarized the air around the antenna. And it's like a big balloon, electrostatic balloon, that gets compressed millions of times a second in random order by these compressions where the photons hit our magnetopause. Anyway, that to me is probably the best system. We're working on making a small electrostatic generator built after the order of stuff built by Oleg Jefmenko. And it takes high voltage that you feed it from an antenna, and it causes this motor to spin. And when it spins, we're going to have it spin a little electric motor over here that becomes a generator, and it will generate electricity at voltages and frequencies that we want. Well, our biggest problem at the moment is solving how to make a mechanical governor that doesn't depend on semiconductors that could be ruined by an EMP strike. We're working on it, and it's not something that, as I say, that we're going to manufacture. We'll make our own test things, but once we're sure that we've got it fairly well understood and it's working and what components you need, what the range of components can be, we're going to make that available all over the world suddenly when that happens.
And you're going to be a popular guy.
Well, I will probably be likely to live a lot longer than I would if I tried to patent it.
That's true. Okay, sadly, but that's true.
I'm going to take a step back, if it's all right, Stan. We got a question from one of the people in the chat room. Eric asks, with all the things going on in the Madrid fault line area with the sinkholes and the earthquakes, what do you expect to see anything? And if so, what influences would something like an earthquake along that, if it was a big one, I guess 8.7.0, 8.0, what influence would it have on the Mississippi River? I think Eric was right by the Mississippi River.
Some of the effects of the drought are already being obvious. The Mississippi River is drying up, and commerce that goes across the river, up and down the river, is being greatly impacted. They're starting to call for water to be pumped in from the Missouri River into the Mississippi to just raise the water levels enough for boats to get through now. If you have an earthquake of the magnitude of the New Madrid in the 1800s, that could cause the river to disappear. It could cause it to run backwards, as it did then. It could open up a channel all the way to the Great Lakes, and they could drain down the river, and it'd be a super river connecting the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. There are a number of what-ifs that people are looking at, but certainly it would cut the nation in half if it dried it up. We'd have to build roads across it. But if it made a bigger river, there would have to be bridges built to keep commerce going back and forth, because we have a lot of trucks that go back and forth across there.
Right.
I noticed that you had, in the questions that came across, someone asked about the Nazi activities at the South Pole after World War II. Do you see that question, Doug?
Yeah, actually, that I don't have the sheet in front of me, but we solicited questions from last night's show for tonight, and several listeners had sent in questions, this being one. If you'd like to address that, Stan, go ahead.
Sure. The Nazis, some of them did escape, and obviously you've heard of Operation Paperclip, where Werner von Braun and other German scientists were recruited here into the United States, and the Russians got their contingent of them as well. And they passed on their V2, thrust rocket technology to the Americans, to the Russians. The Americans kind of went a little bit faster than the Russians in the end. But there was another group of them that were taken under wing immediately in the idea of developing their flying saucer technology. And I never went to the base at the South Pole. I did see photographs of Dr. Teller and the guy that introduced me to Dr. Teller and this, Dr. James R. Maxfield in Dallas, breaking open a bottle of champagne as they went under the South Pole. It was kind of a tradition. And no one was going to sit offshore with a telescope and spy camera and see this base, because you couldn't even get to it without a submarine. You go under the ice cap and into the landmass there. Anyway, so the Russians or the Nazis could have escaped to there. Certainly there were a number of them that went into South America and into Brazil and other countries, but primarily Brazil. So I'm sure that the Nazi contingent was used in the development of this technology. That's about all I can tell you. I did meet with Dr. Teller, with Dr. von Braun once. I found him to be a very impressive gentleman, very tall and strong hands, coarse hair, and coarse language at times. But he was a very bright fellow, and I don't know whether he knew about our project, but Dr. Henry Pohl, P-O-H-L, at Houston, NASA, he and I were talking once on air, and he did mention that we'd reached the maximum efficiency of chemical thrust rockets that could possibly be achieved, and that the next step for NASA and the space program was to make, well, he said, something like electrical propulsion. I'll drop it there. So that was in '83 when we were filming in Dallas, in Houston, and so I don't know whether Von Braun knew about it, but certainly Dr. Pohl did and others later. So anyway, that's the answer to that. Okay. I'm looking at your questions here. Okay. Do I see a correlation between something out there now and the pattern of 3,600 years ago, Moses in Egypt, 7,200 years ago, as in the days of Noah? Would you comment on your recent thoughts on Zechariah Sitchin's research? A few questions there from Jan in Dallas. The Bible does say in the last days of this age that it will be as it was in the time of Noah, and that's before Moses. But in the time of Noah, the world was corrupted by crossbred hybrid humans and fallen ones, and were very wicked and sinful as a result of that. Now, we're seeing that now where I'm sure we have crossbreeding with these hybrids. There's just too many contact and abduction cases that hold up when you investigate them. So we have that now, and we also have a very corrupt world, as anybody can see that watches TV or reads the news. It's a world that really needs the order of the Creator put upon the planet and its people and its living things so they work in harmony. That's the correlation I see there. Zechariah Sitchin's research is certainly has been challenged by a number of other professional translators of the Sumerian cuneiform that was used to develop his theory about the Anunnaki and planet Nibiru. In fact, some of the challenge to that was that the planet Nibiru was really translated to the planet Jupiter that we call Jupiter today, and that it was in relation to Jupiter rather than some 3,600-year orbital planet. Having said that, in part of this paper that I'm trying my best to get done on gravity, I found a formula, or developed a formula that tells us where planets can orbit, and only there around our sun. It's a formula that's a very easily explainable one, why it occurs. It's on a volume of space and spin and things like that. And using this formula, I extrapolated it out to probably to where 20 or 30 orbits of planets could be from the sun out. And I did find that there is a stable orbit at 238 times the distance of the Earth from the sun, and that has an orbital period in that ring of 3,600 years, plus or minus about 10 for era. Now, if there is a planet or an object occupying that orbit, it's so far out there, it would have to have a very eccentric, very stretched ellipse, egg-shaped like that orbit. This is the sun down here, and this is its furthest point out here. In fact, it would be further than 238 because that's just the main orbit. It would be way out there, probably 500-600 times the distance of the Earth from the sun. So out here it goes very slow, and then as it gets closer to the sun, it speeds up and zips up and slows up. And the majority of its 3,600-year orbit is way out in this section here. Down inside, around the sun and the inner planets, it would only be here about 11 years maximum, come in and out in 11 years. Now, if that object is, if there is an object there that Sitchin's research would suggest, and others who are talking about this 10th planet coming in, or a collapsed star or whatever, infrared star, if that is true, I think we should have seen it by now, even if it's coming in. Here's the orbits of all the planets. Even if it's coming in from underneath on the southern hemisphere and going up like that and around the sun and back, that astronomers in a straight, amateur for sure, should have seen this. The argument they make against what I've said, that there's the people that are supporting Nibiru or Planet X, is that if you don't have an infrared telescope, you can't see, a red star, a dark star, because the light's infrared and not visible.
Right.
Fair enough. But there would have been other factors we would have seen around the sun by now if it was here. So I'm kind of, not too impressed with the fact that we're going to have some Planet X come close to us and disturb us or anything, close to Earth. Something can disturb the orbital ring, the fluid of space that forms planets and forms these little splash ripples out from the sun that are invisible, something can affect those, which will affect not only our orbit, but Mars and Jupiter and whatever. And in the work of Velikovsky in Worlds in Collision, he does suggest that the planet Venus was once either a planet, in the asteroid belt or further out as a moon of another one of the gas giants, and got thrown into its current orbit. And this happened within recorded history in the Egyptian records, where they saw, they call them the gods fighting in the sky, that kind of stuff, where it shot lightning out, electricity, as it passed close to Mars or to the planet that was occupying the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. But in human written records, there is some suggestion that planets do move and jump orbits for whatever reason, or comets do get captured into orbits and become planets. By the way, Venus is the only planet that spins backwards to the rest of them. And even that is flowing. It's going to probably flip upside down and spin the right way and start to join the troops once it stabilizes in that orbit, which is, a long time happening. But anyway, that's a long way to answer that Jan's question. I hope it did answer. Now, you got something that you want to talk about? Or
we got a question here. Go ahead. This is from Christopher from San Jose, California. He says, can you ask Dan if he thinks the satanic elite are creating the underground tunnels and bases to break open the gates of hell? If so, do they want to unleash the fallen angels? Thanks.
Well, either the fallen angels or disembodied spirits or whatever you want to call them. Yes. You see, hell or the confinement of the disembodied spirits, demons, whatever, is in a bottomless pit. Now, think about that. Inside of a ball that's hollow, where is the bottom?
There isn't.
The bottomless pit is inside of a hollow sphere. And so if, as I'm sure it will happen, as it says in the book of Revelation, that there was an angel came down and opened up the door to let out all those noxious creatures and stuff to afflict mankind, they came from inside the earth. So your question is, your answer to your question is yes, I think he's doing that. And that's where they're coming from.
Oh, wow. Interesting. I never thought of that.
I'm still hung up on that in a hollow sphere. Where's the bottom?
We'll see if the Earth keeps spinning. I guess you would just be kind of like hung up in the.
But no, I mean I understand that. So with all of these underground bases, just to be clear, I understand this, Dan, and again, forgive my ignorance on this. There are in existence right now, today, in 2013, underground bases in existence, right? That's correct. That's a backward statement. Is it?
Right.
Okay. These were once military bases, or where did these come from?
In the beginning, probably they were military. The problem with surface bases and installations is they're too vulnerable to detection or destruction.
Okay.
The Air Force, I've got photos in my computer here of some of the early Air Force tunnel digger machines, which would dig, I think they were about 22 feet in diameter tunnel. But the Germans, 10 years ago at least, had one they were selling publicly that would do 42-foot diameter tunnel. And, obviously these can be used in civilian, like the Channel Project, the Channel Tunnel under, between England and the mainland of Europe. But these things are now public, yet they were developed and tested some time back. And in fact, in Florida, where there were probably some done there was something like a sinkhole that occurred there, 20, 25 years ago, and they found debris in this hole that came in from the sides, big rings of metal. They couldn't figure out what the rings of metal were for. Big rings, like, 20, 30 feet high. Yeah. And it collapsed down into what was probably a tunnel dug by one of these machines, and it caved in. The rings are interchangeable because they're the cutter rings on the front of the tunnel bore, and they wear out. And whether it was new ones or used ones, they found these and couldn't understand where these big, gigantic rings came from. but Florida is not a clever place to tunnel. It's just it's going to go underwater.
Yeah.
The good places are like solid rock, granite, in the Rockies and the Appalachians and the Sierra Nevada.
Okay, but just to be clear, then, I mean, essentially what we've got, and maybe this is an oversimplification, but we've got a war, if you will, between the true good or evil versus man, or evil, good versus evil, if you will. And ground zero for this battle, could be said, are these underground bases. Is that a fair?
Well, there was fighting and death. I mean, a lot of shooting and fighting when the humans were kicked out of the joint occupied bases. I do think, however, we have our own bases left in various places, or new ones that have been made. And as long as they don't interfere, these new bases and their operations, with what Satan is doing, I think he lets them be. Yeah.
Why don't we hear about this? Like, and forgive my ignorance again. Why hasn't there been a 60 Minutes program or Meet the Press or something? I mean, seriously.
I'll give you some advice. Read your article from 2 days or from yesterday.
I know, but to the average listeners, to the person listening to this, we'll say, eat a bowl of ice cream in bed and listening to this program. Why haven't we? What's the deal? Well, why don't we know about this? Why doesn't the average person know about this stuff that we're talking about?
Well, because the Illuminists, the bankers, the wealthy of the world own the media, and they have put people in position over the media so that nothing gets out that will screw up the plan they've got. It's just as simple as that. They're stronger than the NSA or any government, the KGB or whatever. These people make the money available to the public figures that apparently run countries.
It makes sense, and everything. Look, I suppose I'm coming at this from a devil's advocate point of view and kind of a simplistic point of view, because people, without a doubt, Stan, I'm going to get emails tonight and tomorrow saying, "What are you talking about? You're nuts. You're crazy. We know about this." Somebody would talk. Well, let's address that. Why haven't people who do know about this, soldiers or military officials, why haven't they spoken about this?
Some have. I gave my testimony in a 3-hour video that has never been released to the public yet. That crowd, that dentist, what's his name? That's going to reveal the government cover-up. Let me see if I've got his email.
Dr. Stephen Greer?
Greer. His people interviewed me in a secret location close to NORAD here. And cleverly, I had Holly attend the video session and videotape the videotapers and me from a side camera. So I have that videotape here, but Claire didn't want to release mine because the testimony he was using from the other guys in the military and civilian complexes that testified had to lean toward the real alien presence, the deception. So I count Greer among those that are helping to deceive the people.
Wow. And see, folks, see how all this is kind of like interconnects. And during our shows during the week, we talk about various things, including many things that we've touched on tonight, but certainly not in the depth that we have, and certainly not with the expertise Mr. Deo has. So, things do interconnect them, and we are in for a grand deception. Stan, we've got about 30 minutes left of the program. Why don't you? Do you mind if we take a couple of quick calls here before?
That'd be fine. I'm just, while you're doing it, I'm just checking over the questions here that they sent in before showtime, be sure we've covered the majority of them.
Okay. We'll go ahead. Let's make sure we cover those, because those people had sent those in last night and earlier today.
All right. James in Naples, Florida said, do you believe that the direction and intensity of Hurricane Sandy was man-made? Do we have the technology, and if so, what's the purpose? Okay. Interesting enough, before Hurricane Sandy went onshore, it did a dogleg to the left, which is not typical. And there was something called the HARP status report, HARPstatus.com, which showed the intensity being measured by some, group of individuals, maybe 25 to 30 of them that have sensors across the United States and now into Europe, which sense when HARP signals are being broadcast, so that you can tell when HARP intensity is going to move a storm. And surprise, surprise, they had a huge hot spot moving right over New York, where Hurricane Sandy followed it, and then when it turned, okay,
off the charts.
Off the charts, yes. Well, now, funny thing about that, I was quite interested in the HARP phenomenon, and the HARP status report, and so I tried to contact the people that are doing it. Have you tried this, Joe and Doug?
No,
I haven't.
Not HARP.
Very
White House, some other places, but not yet HARP.
Okay, well, these people are hiding behind, a number of jumps, but I tracked down their host IP over in Virginia, close to whose headquarters, and they were using Time Warner servers, super servers that Ted Turner owns. Now, what is going on when they tell you it's happening like that? Why are they doing it in hiding? You see, I've got it all down here. I've got the ISP, the who is, and all the stuff on Time Warner, and it goes back to IronMountain.net holding company, and I've traced them back. So,
did you say Iron Mountain?
Yeah. Okay. Let me just see if I've got. Let's see here. Weather space. Blah 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 blah. It's in the data here. They're located in Herndon, Virginia. They have Roadrunner Holdings, which is part of Time Warner's group.
Yep.
I can't find it. Mountain, iMountain.com. It's not Iron Mountain, but iMountain, but I'm certain it's linked to Iron Mountain stuff anyway. But basically, that was telling me that somebody either knew about it or wanted to know about it, and it was okay to let us know that it was due to HARP. Now, why, I don't understand why the left wing would be wanting us to know that, but it certainly is possible to steer hurricanes. You don't create them. The amount of energy required to create a hurricane is enormous. 1,200 or more atomic bombs worth. I mean, it's huge. But you can steer a hurricane by heating the air on one side or the other of its movement so that it bends this way or that way. It's like with a water hose in your garden. There could be like a fire hose, for instance. A fireman takes a fire hose, he can shoot a stream 250 feet up there and blow a hole in the side of a building with the force of the water. But yet his little hand can move it like that and move that great powerful force. Same thing with HARP type technology. And remember, the Antichrist is going to do some pretty miraculous stuff. In the sight of men, it says, he will bring fire down from the sky, lightning from a HARP-directed strike, heats the ionosphere, drops lightning down to a target. I guarantee you that the Antichrist is going to use HARP to his own benefit. He'll try to create what Solomon did when he dedicated the temple. After he gold-plated it, he sacrificed, calls to God, okay, bless it. And in front of all the men of Israel, it says, God, send a fire down from heaven to consume the offering. Well, okay, fire from heaven is lightning. I mean, it's just, burning fire. And they can do this with HARP. So in answer to that person's question, James, yeah, you can steer hurricanes and tornadoes where you want them to go with HARP-type technology.
And if I can buttress his question from Florida with mine, why in the world, Stan, would they want to steer it into a populated center like New York, New Jersey? I mean, in the case of Hurricane Sandy, what's the motive there?
Well, here's another little part of the puzzle. HARP in Alaska is not the only HARP station on the planet. There are at least 12 others. And some are Chinese, some are Russian, and some are who knows. How do you get them to work in concert so they're not working against each other? Or was our base not working to counter this, and it happened, and so we're being shown that HARP-type technology moved that storm, and it could be blamed on, say, the Russians or the Chinese or whoever.
Okay.
I mean, I remember watching that storm, watching the heart monitor, seeing the weathermen say, "Oh, it can never make that turn. It'll never make that turn. It's a 1 in a million." And then that they were so sure of themselves, even when it was down near Florida.
Yeah, Stan, I think you were on the show in late September. I at some point. And Joe kept showing me. He said, "Man, there's something wrong with this, and watch, it's going to be bad." And we had to check the archives, and I was blowing him off. I said, "Come on, nah."
Thankfully, it wasn't bad here, as bad as we thought it was going to be, but it was bad for a lot of people. And there's still 56 days. We see Governor Christie yelling at Obama because of the lack of aid.
But what you said, Stan, about other places having the antenna raised, known as HARP. So I guess that does give some legitimacy to Jesse Ventura's expose of the HARP in America, I suppose, as it being able to modify weather,
modify, change, and direct.
Right.
It can do a lot of things. Because it'll punch a energy beam up into the ionosphere. It can create a situation geophysically that you could create holographic images in. I mean, it's,
wow.
It doesn't have to be destructive. It can just be impressive.
That's an interesting statement. And it goes back to what you said too about the signs and wonders. It's almost as if that we are the attendees of this huge magic act, And, yeah.
Well, think back to the Bay of Pigs invasion. Before the invasion was to occur, they dropped leaflets out in Cuba in Spanish to the armies saying, "Look, when you see the vision of the Virgin Mary appear in the clouds, support the troops she brings in to free your country." Right? And offshore on naval ships, they were going to project, images of Virgin Mary on the base of clouds so that they would know to support the American troops. And that was a very primitive form of technology at that time. I remember I was in the Air Force at the time. We were all getting ready to go get the bad guys, join the war. So it was a tense time. But anyway, that technology was very simple. But HARP and other laser and holographic technology can do that job much better all over the planet now.
Wow. Okay. There's another question here that just was messaged in, and I'll ask this. I didn't catch who it was from. The Hadron Collider in CERN.
Yeah.
Does that present potential problems for humanity? And I'm actually paraphrasing that question, but
look, I don't think so. I mean, there might be some problem to the people in the neighborhood of the ring itself, but people have worried about it producing a black hole when they collide these things. The God particle being a black hole.
Right.
What people don't realize is black holes do have a life-death cycle. And in the environments that they would create it in, it'd be a very tiny black hole, a microscopic one, and would not grow and suck in, the Hadron Collider and all that kind of stuff. There are other factors that have to be at play in the fluid of space, if you wish, in the region to support it and let it gain energy. And if it doesn't have anything to feed on, it doesn't. So,
okay. All right.
I'm not about it, no.
Fair enough. And the other question here, what do you know about the tsunami bomb tested off in New Zealand? Is that something we should be, to talk about?
Yeah, did you hear about that, Stan?
Yeah, it's on our website. I think Holly put it up in the last day or two. It's weather modification, really, environmental modification in warfare. And, if you were to set off a bomb like that offshore of your alleged enemies or somebody you want to do harm to their country on the coastline, it's probably no one would even know that the bomb went off. But it would release, energy on a seafloor that would vibrate, oscillate with the impulse, and generate a tsunami, which would just be a freak of nature, like a king wave that became a tsunami. And, stuff happens, but we didn't do it, Look, weather warfare treaties were being agreed on between Russia and the United States in the mid-'70s.
Other treaties at the UN on weather wars? Yeah.
Banning certain types of weather warfare. Whether they're still in effect now or not, I don't know. I think somewhere in my records I still have newspaper and obviously the headline on it about the treaty between Russia and the United States banning weather warfare. I mean, simple things like Russia spreading coal dust over the Siberian snowfields, changing the weather that would affect Alaska and the northwest United States because it would be absorbing heat, you see, instead of reflecting it back. Just simple things like that. And then there was cloud seeding, and we've gotten much more sophisticated and access to much stronger systems, especially resonance systems that just store energy, uniformly. Thanks to Nikola Tesla's work, that was balancing impedance. Yes. Yeah.
Is that speaking about all this too? Again, we have a lot of new listeners, a lot of listeners that are not familiar with certain things. Chemtrails, for example. What are chemtrails? Are they used for a specific weather modification purpose, or something more?
Let's ask this first, because we had a guest on who was a columnist, and we brought this up to him, and he said it's nonsense. Remember?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to think of who you're referring to, but yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, people obviously have their different levels of growth and come around at different times.
But still, I mean, chemtrails, you're talking about old technology as well, right? Old stuff.
Well, look at this. Doug, you and I are old enough to remember back when we were kids, and you looked up at the B-52s and turboprops and everything flying. They left a contrail that disappeared after a few minutes, right?
Right. Yes.
We never saw trails that hung over the sky like that for hours in a day, right?
That's right.
Now, I can still go outside here at night and sometimes early in the morning, and I can watch planes flying overhead here in Colorado that leave contrails that disappear, real contrails. Now, either they're using a different kind of fuel, or they're flying at an altitude, that the other craft are not. But chemtrails linger. They are there, and they are real. And anybody that's saying that they're really just a normal phenomenon is wrong. Absolutely wrong. I've got a circle of friends here that look, that was part of the Teller patent. The idea was twofold. One was to do weather modification because the sun is entering into a period, has been for some time, of increased irradiance, of solar energy coming out of it. And to control the albedo of the planet, the reflectivity of the planet, of certain types of radiation, infrared, whatever, putting very fine particulate metal in the skies at high altitude will allow you to create a shield that either keeps the heat in or keeps the heat out, or both.
That's John Holdren's excuse, isn't it? Didn't he write that in his paper, Geoengineering?
I don't know the name of the guy, but go on.
So I've heard that it reflects the sunlight to cool the planet. I've heard that it is used to cover for radar, things from radar.
Yeah, radar chaff for the radar.
Anything but the real problem, which I see, is the heavy metals being constantly, every day that there is no clouds in the sky. I see these things where we live pretty much. They cover the sky. Every single day. Yeah. And it's full of heavy metals. It has if you've seen the movie What in the World Are They Spraying? The people get their kids' hair tested in the increased levels of aluminum and barium and even sulfur and some other metals, heavy metals in these chemtrails. I really think that it has something to do with the vaccines, the stuff they put in the water and the food, and it just tears our immune system apart. Kind of like the movie says. Is there more to it than that, or is there less to it than that?
Yeah, is it benevolent? To because the sun is getting brighter, so we have to do something about this, or modify something, or is it malevolent?
Well, look, I think that there are pockets where the spraying like that occurs that are part of illegal testing on the human populace for various biological effects. Because there have been like gels that fell out of the sky that have been analyzed and had, living cells and things like that, and bacteria. So I think that's not, a huge stretch of the imagination to believe that they test on us, because they've admitted to testing on the human populace in other ways. But I do think that, Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and even some of the vaccines and stuff they try on the military to see if it's going to work or not. But the initial, and I think the prevailing use of it was to balance the planet's heat signature, like the albedo and the greenhouse effects, and to shield from satellite detection over military moves. Now, in your area, guys, where you are, and you have all these chemtrails, do you have any military bases nearby?
To our southwest.
We have
not close. No,
we have Niagara Falls, which is north. The lake
and southwest.
The lake. They always spray at the sunset. The sunset always seems to be covered, and the sunset's on the lake always, especially in the summertime, right in the middle of the lake. And it just seems that there is no rhyme or reason where these things go, but they're always in our area. Whether we're in Syracuse 4 hours away to the east or Cleveland 2 hours to the west, I mean, they're around.
Well, although, Stan, I got to tell you this, we were up in the North Adirondacks in New York State. Right, well, actually, further than that, it was where the St. Lawrence River separates Canada from the United States.
Right.
And it was interesting where we could see. I mean, you could actually see where there would be it would be cut off, like at the boundary where the north of Canada, nothing in Canada, but everything in the United States, so to speak. Now, I'm not sure if it was just that area alone, but it was very noticeable where it was almost like a line in the sky where, based on geography, based on geopolitical lines.
I've seen patterns, I've seen circles. It just doesn't make sense. But one thing I do know is that it's not normal. And as you said, Dan, you made a great point. I was going to ask you, is the sun getting brighter? Because it is to me, and a lot of other people I've read that they've commented on say, yes, the sun is a lot brighter than it used to be.
Joe, do you know how long we have known that the magnetic field of the Earth is weakening? Decades.
Yeah.
And when it decreases to a certain point, the ultraviolet from the sun at its normal levels is going to get through, and it will fry people. Now, I've talked to people where the South Atlantic anomaly, which is a thinness in the ozone layer, or the ionosphere, we don't put aircraft through that area. We don't put satellites through that area, or occupied satellites, etc., because the penetration through that hole in the South Atlantic is lethal. It is really lethal. And I was talking to some people that rang us from the islands. They're southwest of Cuba, and they're off the coast of Brazil, I think it is, when the South Atlantic anomaly hole opened up a bit and the edges of it touched the islands, and their children and adults were having pins, feeling like pins sticking in their skin when they walked out into the sun. The children were becoming nauseous and disoriented, and they were being committed to hospitals because of this, taken out of school. And it was because of that small amount of extra UV radiation that was getting through. Now, I have felt this in Australia when the ozone hole opened up over Perth, and it was so bright that the newscasters were saying to the household women, when you're washing your whites and hanging them out in the line, wear sunglasses or you will find it very painful. I was driving down the freeway to work, and the sun was overhead coming onto my jeans, and it was hurting going through the jeans. If I took my sunglasses off, my eyes cried from the brightness of the ultraviolet. It was bluish. Now, the magnetic field is the major thing protecting us from that, and it is weakening. We know that we might be approaching a magnetic polar reversal, which does occur, very infrequently, but the magnetic pole at the north is wandering faster than the south pole, and it's like a top about to fall over. So maybe they know in the back room we have to develop a way to shield our crops and our people when the ultraviolet radiation gets through the magnetic field.
I don't really have a couple minutes left, but I just find it hard to believe that they would do anything to really help us. They do.
It's helping themselves, Joe, because they need to grow food. They need to keep animals alive to eat and use when they come back up to the surface. It's very selfish, but I mean, they're pragmatists. They've got to have a world to come back to.
It makes sense to me.
I got one question. Have you heard anything about a sun, the pole shift on the sun? Was there a pole shift that took place last year?
If it's not last year, it would be now, because every 22 years, every 11 years, the sun's magnetic poles flip-flop.
The solar max.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, solar sunspot max. Now, the solar polar orbiting satellites have shown that the every 22 years, called the Hale magnetic cycle, the magnetic pole returns to what it should have been, but every 11 years it flip-flops. So if it does that, and our own magnetic field is weakening, which it is, and it's weakened, then the flip-flopping of the sun's magnetic field may affect us and cause ours to flip-flop when it's weak. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that makes sense.
Would this be a fast, or would this just speed up until it got into its place?
It might take several weeks or months for it to happen, but then again, I've seen it move 20 degrees in a day when the CME hit the atmosphere. The North Pole deviate that much in a single day and then go back. The magnetic field, I don't think, will go to zero, which would give us no protection. It would be shields down, like in Star Trek, we're vulnerable. But I do think it will get very low as it flip-flops, and it will be irregular and cause holes in our magnetic field to drift across the planet as it's reversing over a period of days, weeks, months. And if you're under one of those holes, you're going to get cooked. You'll need to go underground or in mountains or caves, just like the Bible says. In addition to that, I think it's not only going to be bright, it's going to be hot, because the Bible even tells you that trees, a third part of the trees and the grass, are going to be burned, and a third part of the fish, if not a lot of them, are going to be boiled in the oceans from the heat. There's going to be heat zones pass over various parts of the planet when this happens. And another thing to consider in the physics of it all, if you look at how much of the Earth's surface is directly exposed to the sun at any point in time, it's not 50%. It's about a third part of the grass and the trees.
Wow.
That's interesting.
I never... Yeah, you think about that, and you think it's 50%, or would be 50%, but... the
angles become oblique, you see, and bounce off after about a third of the surface.
So a third, and so it's biblical, and once again, it proves the...
Yeah, it does prove exactly what the Bible says, if what you're saying is correct. And we have a question. The magnetosphere, if weak, can it damage neurological connections? Can it make people crazy, the changes that are going on in the magnetosphere?
That's an interesting question. It has been noticed in France, probably 35, 40 years ago, they did a paper on increase in failing immunity, divorce rates, crime rates, when we had solar sunspot activity at high levels. I think I put that in the Cosmic Conspiracy Act, if you look up in the index there.
Yeah. In fact, I can tell you did.
We got about 3 minutes left.
Yeah, I want to thank you. Did you feel like you were on trial or cross-examined? I'll tell you, it was just...
No, I've enjoyed it. It's quite stimulating. You ask me things to make me think a bit, and that's good. I've forgotten so many things, or I don't think about them regularly, and then when we have this kind of a interchange, it's good. Places.
Yeah, and folks, the folks that are watching on the Christians United Broadcasting Network, I'm holding up the book Cosmic Conspiracy. You've got to get this edition for your library. Go to standdale.com.
Yeah, and the #1 preparedness book written by his wife, Holly, Dare to Prepare.
That's right.
Well, Cosmic Conspiracy, Doug, let me just put it, that's what I call the spiritual prep manual, and Holly's book is the physical prep manual. The two go hand in hand.
Yeah, and well worth every cent and well worth the time spent to read it. I would urge everyone to grab a copy. In fact, grab more than one, because if you're like me, I won't let it out of my hands. Mr. Dale, I've got to say thank you so much, because you've just done the information you've given us, this is a keeper, folks. This is something you burn to your iPod or put in your iPod or burn the CD. And
we'll definitely put this up on our YouTube channel.
Yes.
And send the link to you, Stan, so you can put it up on your website if you want. I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's never a dull moment when you're on. You are a very intelligent man, and I respect your work. You're way ahead of your time, and we could do this every day. You could be the Hagmann and Deo report here.
Holy cow, man!
Well, we could certainly do it more often. Maybe not 3 hours at a stretch. We'll talk about it off air. Maybe once every week or two or something, we can get together and do something.
All right, my friend. God bless you, and thank you. Thank your wife for. Thank your wife as well.
I'll do it. Night, guys.
See you. Guys, we are at the end of our show. We will be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time with new microphones hooked up, and hopefully we'll be on video here. And we got a quick shot right there.
Right here, absolutely. We got them.
And we don't have anybody scheduled to come on tomorrow, and so we will. We have some housekeeping and taking your calls, probably 2 hours, an hour and a half out of the show, and we got a lot to get into. So I want to thank everybody for listening tonight. It was a great show with Mr. Stan Dale, and I definitely another one to listen to again. We will put it up on our Team K9 YouTube channel. You can also find that on Facebook and the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on Facebook as well. You guys have a good night.
Good night.